Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have 7 o'clock. We'll call the regular city council meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Certainly. Mr. Burmeister?
Here.
Ms. Hammond?
Here.
Mr. Kittle?
Here.
Mr. Knight? Here. Ms. Mitchell?
Present.
Ms. Verbecki?
Here.
Mayor McDaniel?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Item number 4, council approval of the minutes. Regular city council meeting that occurred on March 13th of 2017. If there are not any corrections, I would be open for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Verbecki, supported by Ms. Mitchell. Any further discussion? We're ready to vote.
Ms. Verbecki?
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Burmeister?
Yes.
Ms. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Kittle?
Yes.
Mr. Knight?
Yes.
Mayor McDaniel?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next up is item number 5, appointments and presentations. Council, for your consideration, request for a motion to confirm the appointment of Ms. Yvonne Roberts to the Tax Increment Finance Authority for a term ending March 13th of 2021. Ms. Roberts, if you could please come to the podium. Council, as Ms. Roberts comes to introduce herself this evening, just to let you know, I did meet with Ms. Roberts about the position, as well as our Director of Authorities, Sam Marius, met with her to discuss what qualifications and experiences would most fit for this particular appointment. So at this time, I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Roberts.
Good evening. I have lived in the city for 4 years. I'm a new mom. He's 11 months old and very much a menace. I initially applied to be on the Planning Commission because in a previous position with the city of Mount Clemens, I did minutes for the Planning Commission and worked in the Community Development Department. So I am very familiar with every, developments from start to finish and the language and whatnot. But there wasn't an opening, so they offered the TIFA board membership. And since it's in the same wheelhouse and I love learning about local government, I'm actually shocked that there are things that I don't know about still. I graciously accepted because it's, again, similar but different enough so it'll provide some learning opportunities for myself to grow as well. So thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your willingness to serve in this capacity. We greatly appreciate it. Council, at this time, are there any questions for Ms. Roberts? If not, I would be open for a motion for the appointment.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Kittle.
Excuse me. I'd move to confirm the appointment Yvonne Roberts to the Tax Increment Finance Authority Board of Directors for a term ending March 13th of 2021.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kittle, supported by Ms. Mitchell. Any further discussion? We are ready to vote.
Mr. Kittle?
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Verbecki?
Yes.
Mr. Burmeister?
Yes.
Ms. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Knight?
Yes.
Mayor McDaniel?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And again, thank you, Ms. Roberts. Have a great evening.
Thank you, you as well.
And then council, item 5B is request for motion to accept the 3rd and 4th quarter 2016 monitoring network review summaries in the 2016 monitor network review summary for Oakland Heights Development Landfill reports. Good evening, Mr. Forg. How are you?
I'm doing well, Mr. Mayor and council members. How is everybody tonight? Good. We'll make this brief and you'll have an even better night.
Excellent. Excellent.
If you'd like, I can go through each report, or I can just go through the annual, which summarizes both the 3rd and 4th quarter.
That'd be great. If anyone has any questions, we could just pause.
And certainly questions at any time. Field observations, everything was pretty much squared away. We had an issue with one pump, monitoring well 47D, and it created some problems, which I'll talk about in the next section, but it was repaired, and things are back to normal. So no real issue there. We had a long-standing issue with MW31SR where there was some question about whether the groundwater concentrations were influenced by the sedimentation pond. So we put a staff gauge in to measure the elevation of the water in the pond relative to the elevation of the water in the groundwater well to see whether there was some relation. And it appears it took quite a while to gather the data because the ponds were often dry or frozen. But the end result is the pond is pretty much consistently about 4 to 4.5 feet higher in elevation than the elevation of the water in the groundwater well. So the thought is the movement is from the pond to the well, thereby creating some variability, which is what we were seeing before, which got us looking at it. So we're aware of it. The levels are still below the criteria, but we're aware of it, and we're just keeping an eye on it. So now at least we know what's going on, and we're just kind of watching things. So we won't let it get crazy. If something else, something starts getting VOCs or something like that, then we got a different issue, and we're going to look at that separately. So, but other than that, that's pretty much taken care of, and it took a while to come to that conclusion. Back in the end of 2014, this well and pond issue started several years ago, so I'm kind of going in chronological order. We had, at the end of 2015, we had some elevated total inorganic nitrogen levels, kind of in a bunch of wells, just a compound, once again, but they were kind of up in a whole bunch of wells. It was thought that was probably a laboratory error. First quarter 2016 confirmed that. They were right back to where they needed to be, so it was just a lab issue. Number of statistical exceedances, I pretty much reviewed them all, talked to the guys from Brown and Caldwell. I feel comfortable that there's no issues. They're not associated with releases from the landfill. It's just the natural variability for the most part. And then we had an issue in the second quarter and third quarter of 2016 where we had a couple of VOCs. We had 2 VOCs. We had VOCs in 2 wells in quarter 2. Quarter 3, the VOCs were gone in one of the wells, but the other one, which was 47D, the one with the pump problem, had the same concentration of the same compound in it 2 quarters in a row. So the conclusion was that the likelihood is the pump, which was kind of acting up anyway, may have been allowing some sort of exchange of gases rather than the compressed air that's used to push the water out. They're completely segregated when the system's working correctly. When the system isn't working correctly, there's some crossover, and the air can have some volatiles. So they fixed the pump, third quarter sample, fourth quarter sample, we're good. No more VOCs. So equipment malfunction was all that was. That's all the groundwater issues, which are really the main issue here. We have not had a exceedance of the secondary collection system, which is kind of that early warning thing that we were having a lot of problems with a couple of years ago. 2016 was clean, no exceedances of the flow levels. Surface water sample and the leachate monitoring samples all look good. There's nothing unusual in any of them. So really a pretty quiet year for the most part. That's basically it in a nutshell. And I'm happy to answer any questions or at least try.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Council, any questions? Mr. Becky?
Thank you. I have a question. There has been an odor around the dump, and I was wondering if you can attribute that to some of with the VOCs in the third quarter. I haven't noticed it as much recently, but I'm just wondering if you can connect it with any of the problems.
No, I wouldn't. The odors at landfills, in my experience, are that can be detected by humans. I mean, we're talking really, really low levels in these groundwater samples. If you took a glass of it, you would never smell it at those levels, okay? Odors at landfills are usually methane or trash. That's generally it. And these kind of levels, I draw no connection whatsoever. It's pretty solid that those VOCs, the one was probably a laboratory issue, because in the lab, they're analyzing relatively clean samples like these, and they're analyzing some pretty nasty samples. And the lab also uses chemicals in their processes. So to have a little bit of a crossover in the lab's not an issue. And this really small level in this one well that went away after the pump was fixed, no, I don't think there's a chance, to be honest with you, that anyone could smell that.
How do you go about fixing the sulfur smell, the gas smell that's in that area? Because it's not there right now, but it has been previously pretty consistently.
It depends on humidity, temperature, wind direction, activities at the landfill. And I'm not gonna, that really isn't my area of expertise, and it's not what I'm tasked to do here. The key is finding out what the source is. So if it's a methane emission, you go after the gas recovery system. You may have to tweak it, you may have to add an extra well or two. If it's an odor issue associated with waste, then there may be an operational type scenario. You have to get the waste covered up sooner, but I'm not suggesting that that's the answer. You gotta figure out what is the answer. So sometimes it takes a pattern. You know, oh, we only smell this on the southwest side of the landfill when the wind is from the northeast. And the operating face is close to the border, that type of deal. So you gotta kind of put the puzzle together, if you will.
Council, any further questions? Mr. Kittle?
In the packet on page 21, there was a letter from a year ago, February of 2016, that talks about the remaining capacity of the site. And it lists it as 2.287 million cubic yards left.
Okay.
And I'm wondering, that was a year ago. I mean, is there any, it appears that maybe this is a letter that comes out once a year, I'm guessing.
I'm not familiar with the letter you're speaking of, because I basically prepped the reports that I wrote and reviewed those to be ready, but I think Mr. Moore back there would be more than happy to come up and discuss that with you.
Mr. Moore, if you wouldn't mind coming forward,
Yeah.
and then just for the record, if you could just state your name and the title and corporation which you represent.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Sure.
you know, in the packet, it said that, City Manager Tangi said that he had asked representatives to be prepared to discuss the excessive odor, portion of it, so maybe you could chime in on that too.
Yeah,
Lance.
that's why I'm here tonight. My name is Rob Moore. I'm environmental manager with Republic Services, and Oakland Heights is one of the landfills that I'm responsible for. So I can help answer some of the questions that you had, both ends. We'll start first, I guess, with the odor, since you mentioned that. It's been an unusual winter, to say the least, which has created some issues operationally for us. Typically in the winter, you get your snowfall, you get your nice deep freeze, and that allows us to do some movement with soil, get some good soil cover down and such like that, which helps with some of the odors. This winter, because of the warm temperatures that we kept experiencing on a routine basis, limited our ability to do some of that stuff that we normally would do. And so we're trying to play catch up on that stuff. In terms of odors, there's two different things that we're looking at. One would be from a gas collection standpoint, and that's some of the sulfur that you're smelling would be associated with that. And what I can tell you is that we started gas construction last week. We're going to put in some additional wells in Cell F, which is that area closest to Brown and Lapeer Road. We've got 5 wells that we're going to be putting in there, and a couple other things that we're going to be doing to help with some of that gas. And then the other operationally that we look at, that's your active area odors. So that's the garbage as it's deployed each day, gets spread out, and you cover that at the end of each day with dirt and try to minimize that. You can either use dirt or tarps, and in conversations with the DEQ, because they've been out a few times after being called by the city, they asked us not to use the tarps anymore, so they want us strictly to use soil for cover. And so we're trying to get to that point. We've got a large soil stockpile sitting there ready to be pushed. We just need the weather to cooperate so that we can do that. Obviously, the 2 inches of rain that we got over the weekend doesn't help us, but we're trying to get that done as quickly as we can, and that in conjunction with the gas construction that we've got going on, I think will help continue to improve some of the issues that we've been having. Because I feel like they've been getting better. We've been doing some things, but obviously there's room for improvement.
Great, thank you very much.
Yep. And then you asked about capacity, how much air. So I don't have the number right off the top of my head, but we do send Steve Cohen a letter each year indicating annual capacity or how much remaining. And we just completed our aerial. I don't have the numbers back from that, but based off of the most recent that I have, I think we've got 6 to 8 years of life left, is roughly what we're estimating.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Council, any further questions either for Mr. Forg or Mr. Moore? Ms. Hammond?
I haven't been out there, so I hadn't seen, has the garbage, from the high breezes that we had and the winds all
Yes, and
cleaned up
so,
and taken
yeah,
care
I
of?
appreciate that. So obviously, we put in a 20-foot high litter fence along the north and east perimeter, and that had been working really well for us. And then we had the 60-mile-hour sustained winds, and we tried to keep the garbage off that fence as best we could, but obviously being 20 feet high, we couldn't get to all of it, and it ended up acting like a sail. And 22 of the telephone poles that we had along that side snapped, and unfortunately, it released a bunch of garbage. So since that time, we've had at least 4 to 6 temporary labor people working around. We started closest to the site because we want to get that first so it doesn't continue to blow off, do some additional fencing. So we've been out, we've continued to work away. There's been some subsequent events that brought us back to the landfill. I drove around this evening. I think we've made pretty good progress. There's still some plastic bags and some trees and stuff like that that we can't reach. So I know the site manager has been in contact with like a tree cutting service to see if we could get a cherry picker or something to help assist us with getting some of those plastic bags out of the trees that weren't able to move with the hooks. The company that installed the fence are out of Texas. I've got them on site now. Finally was able to get them up here, and they got the poles reset, and over the next week we'll be putting up new meshing. So my hope is within the next week or so that fence is restored, and so we don't have any more issues of offsite, and then we'll get everything else wrapped up that from the litter that's blown off. But if there are any areas that we've missed or something that we need that people feel like we need to focus on, please let us know, and we'll make sure that we get some people out there to get that addressed.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Tangi, have we heard from anybody from the Lake Orion side with the garbage recently?
I was getting contacted by the township supervisor and also by the board chair of the county commission. Not recently, probably in the last week or week and a half, but it's been quiet. But we've also been providing them with updates. Mr. Keenan from Community Development has been keeping in touch with both the landfill and I think the DEQ that's
Yeah,
working with you.
correct.
So we've been keeping them informed. So I think that we've provided them with everything they could possibly be asking for at this point. I just wanted to make sure one thing was clear. So would you attribute most of the excessive odor that's occurring right now to the fact that you haven't been able to cover the landfill with the soil, or is there more to it than that? Because
No, I think
it's excessive.
Yeah, I understand that, and I appreciate that. And I think it's a combination. One is the weather that we've been fighting, and the other two is from the gas collection standpoint. And I won't bore you with a bunch of details, but the construction of that cell, the way it was built and such, prohibited us from doing as much as we would have liked to have done earlier. We needed to be at a certain point before we could get the kind of wells and infrastructure in place that we want, and that's what we're doing now. And we've moved as quickly as we could to get that going. And like I said, we've got 5 wells that are going to be installed there within the next week or so. And it won't be immediate. It takes a little bit of time for all that to take place, but I think that that's going to have a positive impact.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. Sure. Because if you can put yourself in my shoes, the phone rings about this and people are asking, so when? So I know you're saying
Yeah,
no specific time, but can you give us any indication of when the well installations might be completed, when there might be some
the
relief?
well installation should be completed by the end of next week. So those will all be in and be connected. I would say that I probably need at least a couple weeks after that to see what kind of the effect that they're going to have. So I would say at this point, mid-April-ish, you should see some continued improvement.
Okay, great. Actually, Ms. Hammond, are you all set?
I just wanted to remind everybody that we try to be good neighbors to our other cities nearby too, so.
Indeed.
Mr. Knight?
I know that the recycling has decreased the flow into the landfill. How many more years do we anticipate, just based on what's happening today, before you run out of capacity?
Yeah, I would say based on our current incoming tonnages, we're probably in the 6 to 8 year range. 6 to 8.
5 to 8 years.
6 to 8 more years, yep.
I've been ready to close it twice. In the jam. Okay, I was just wondering at the light, because I know it greatly changed. And the last question is I have, at the original commitment, there was never to be any materials received from Canada.
Okay.
Is that still true?
As far as I know, I don't believe we've taken anything.
Well,
from
that's,
Canada.
you know, I've had people ask me questions of that in the last couple months. Is
Yeah.
anything coming from Canada? Because at one time we were a dumping ground and,
Yeah, no, not that I'm aware of. And I look at that on a quarterly basis. I don't recall seeing anything from Canada. I believe everybody's aware of that restriction.
okay, I'm expecting the minutes to reflect that because that was a question. And it's to remind you,
Yep.
don't get tempted.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Council, any further questions? All right, if not, we'll need a motion to accept the quarterly monitoring reports.
Your Honor,
Ms. Mitchell,
I move to accept the third and fourth quarter year 2016 monitoring network review summaries and 2016 annual monitoring network review summary prepared by Environmental Consulting Solutions of the Oakland Heights Development Landfill reports.
moved by Ms. Mitchell. Do we have support?
Support.
Supported by Ms. Rebecki. Any further discussion? We are ready to vote.
Ms. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Verbecki,
Yes.
Mr. Burmeister,
Yes.
Ms. Hammond,
Yes.
Mr. Kittle,
Yes.
Mr. Knight,
Yes.
Mayor McDaniel,
Yes,
motion carries.
thank you. Gentlemen, thank you for the update. We really appreciate you coming in tonight.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You as well. Council, moving on to item number 6, it's public comment. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, this portion of the agenda is reserved for anyone wishing to speak on an item that is not on this evening's agenda. We do ask that when you come through council chamber doors, you complete a public comment form. This just helps ensure that we have accurate information for the meeting record, as well as to facilitate the meeting. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Mike Green, please come forward. Good evening, Mr. Green.
Good evening, everybody, Mayor, Council. How's everybody doing?
Excellent.
I'm at 146 Rosetta Court, and I also represent Post 143 American Legion. I have a couple other members here with me, Clarence Bennett and Phil Harrison. And we're here asking for your support one more time for Memorial Day Parade and festivities, after which we'd like you guys to buy hot hamburgers and hot dogs for us again.
Excellent. Well, we always appreciate the work that the Legion puts into our Memorial Day Parade. As you know, it's always well attended by council. And I think I can speak on behalf of the entire council that we would be honored to provide the hot dogs and hamburgers again this year.
Okay, then you can come in the parade again then.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, sweet, good deal. All right.
Appreciate that.
Same deal as always. This year, though, it's the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War. We are going to highlight that. We're going to have a float, of all things, if we can really get our ducks in order here. We're going to highlight that particular war and try and theme some of the things that we're doing after that event. That very historic and war that, or isn't really a war, it's more of a conflict, but we want to highlight it. We are also, let's see, it's May 29th, it starts at 11 a.m. We are looking for any kind of help that we can get to, any suggestions, if anybody wants to, they can email me, they can call me, they can stop by the post home on Churchill, and any suggestions that you might have to make our parade a little bit better, bigger. We've had some input from some of the community. Aldine specifically, he wants to be involved in a float of some type. He's going to support us. Meyer Food supports us. You guys do. There's other corporate sponsors that we're going after, so we can try and make this thing a little bit bigger. Because last year we had a few comments that was lacking a little bit. So we want to, we also would like to make sure the city shows up with DPW trucks and, of course, our police presence that we get every year. We did get with Officer stubs and put in our application for the parade route to make sure that that gets all approved. And it's going to be the same as it was last year.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Mr. Green. We're looking forward to another great parade for Memorial Day to honor our veterans. Mr. Knight.
I'm wearing my Optimist sweatshirt. Every year you sponsor the Boys and Girls State. I hope you're going to continue that because I know the Optimist Club is very enthusiastic about sending young people to Boys and Girls State. I went in 1947, so I am a graduate, but I would just hope that that's on your schedule again this year to participate in that because we're very proud of what you've done.
Yeah, it's in our charter. I think we have to. But yeah, it's a great program, and the more we can do with the community, the better off the community is in our eyes, and we're glad to do it.
Excellent. Thank you.
One more little quick thing, or my commander's gonna yell at me. The Americanism dinner, where we honor police and fire, and from the county, from the city, and from whoever else gets invited, is on April 8th at 6 o'clock. It's $15 a ticket to get in. We're gonna have a nice menu, and we're gonna honor our local police fire members, and then have a nice dinner, and you kind of interact with them. So that's April 8th at 6 o'clock.
I think the commander has another.
Yeah, that's how, one of the events we support Boys State and Girls State, okay?
Excellent.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Green. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the public comment forms that I have at this time. If you did not get an opportunity to complete one, you still wish to speak, please come forward. Seeing no one, we will go ahead and close public comment at 7:28. Council, we will move on to the consent agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, all items are listed to be considered routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of any of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event that item will be removed from the consent agenda and then considered in its normal sequence. Council items for our consideration this evening are 7A, receiving our boards and commission minutes for the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, the Tax Increment Finance Authority, as well as the Planning Commission. Also, a request for motion to authorize the city manager to request reimbursement of eligible mosquito control activity under the Oakland County's West Nile Virus Fund Program. And a request for motion to approve weed control and a fertilization contract. Council, it's before us for a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Rebecca.
I make a motion to approve consent agenda items 7A1, 7A2, 7A3, 7B, and 7C.
Moved by Ms. Rebecca. Do we have support?
Support.
Supported by.
I'm sorry, apologize.
No problem.
Ms. Rebecca, you beat me to the punch. I wanted to remove agenda item 7A2, if I could, please. Thank you.
Ms. Rebecca, okay to adjust your motion to, okay?
Yep, thank you.
Mr. Kittle? Yes. All right. Any further discussion? We are ready to vote.
Ms. Rebecca?
Yes.
Mr. Kittle?
Yes.
Mr. Knight?
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Burmeister?
Yes.
Ms. Hammond?
Yes.
Mayor McDaniel?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. 7A2, Ms. Mitchell.
Okay, thank you. Just had a question and wanted to highlight something that I noticed in the minutes for the Tifa board. Director Mary's, it was in regards to the Auburn Hills Lunch Loop. I thought that was very innovative. I know it just recently kicked off, but I was wondering if you could just say a few words about it, and if you have any preliminary feedback about how the March 15th activity went, I would welcome that.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell. It's been going very well so far. Our first lunch loop was March 15th, I believe, and that had 16 riders. And then last week, we bumped that up almost double to 27 riders. And we've been getting very positive feedback. The only comment was about the weather. People wish the weather was a little bit nicer so they could enjoy their lunch in the park. But so far, the lunch loop has been going very well.
Glad to hear that. And can you just remind us, what are the ways that we're using to publicize that or to communicate that that's in existence to the local businesses?
We have contacted all the local businesses via email. We asked them for different specials that they would run, and this is specific to both Volkswagen and Comerica. The lunch loop picks up those employees right at their front door and brings them downtown. And we've been contacting them through their HR department, who's been disseminating all the information to them directly.
Great. I know with some of the parking challenges in those areas, it has the potential to be very well utilized. So I don't have any further questions or comments. If nobody else does, I would move to approve agenda item 7A2.
Moved by Ms. Mitchell. Is there support?
Support.
Supported by Ms. Rebecki. Any further discussion? Ready to vote?
Ms. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Rebecki,
Yes.
Mr. Burmeister,
Yes.
Ms. Hammond,
Yes.
Mr. Kittle,
Yes.
Mr. Knight,
Yes,
Mayor McDaniel,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to item A, old business. We have 8A, it's a public hearing request for a motion to approve the 2017 liquor license renewals for the establishments that are in compliance and object to the 2017 liquor license renewals for establishments that are not in compliance. Chief Ockel, is this one yours or?
It's actually, it's mine. Your Honor.
Okay, sorry.
That's
Ms.
okay.
Kowal.
All of the businesses are in compliance except for Parkside, which we understand is closed. So that's the only one we would recommend not sending an approval for, but the rest are all in compliance.
Council, any questions for staff? If there are no questions, be open for a motion. I'm sorry, we gotta do a public hearing first. Go ahead and open the public hearing at 7:32. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, is there anyone wishing to speak on this item this evening? If so, would you please come forward at this time? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public hearing at 7:33. And council, this item is before us for a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Kittle.
I'd move to recommend approval of the annual liquor licenses of those establishments who have now met the licensing requirements of the city, which include Duffy's Pub, Mexican Cantina, Red Ox, and Romano Macaroni Grill. Is the second part of this necessary? And if desired, move to adopt the resolutions objecting to the renewal of liquor licenses based on the outstanding financial obligations to the city's Parkside Tavern. To the city and Parkside Tavern? The city is.
Obligations to the city referencing Parkside Tavern.
Thank you.
All right, moved by Mr. Kittle. Support. Supported by Mr. Burmeister.
question.
Sure, Mr. Knight.
I believe he read the words "and if desired," and that should not be in the motion. It just should be moved to recommend and then move to adopt. That was just a parenthetical to us if we want to do that to continue. So just don't want
Well,
that.
that's why I asked if it needed to be included, because it,
I think it still works though, because if everyone votes on it, then that is desired. So I think we should be okay. All right, we have a motion, we have support. Is there any further discussion? All right, we're ready to vote.
Mr. Kittle,
yes.
Mr. Burmeister?
Yes.
Ms. Hammond,
Yes.
Mr. Knight,
Yes,
Ms. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Rebecki,
Yes.
Mayor McDaniel,
Yes,
motion carries.
thank you. So Madam Clerk, that is clear then, correct, in terms of objecting to Parkside Tavern? Okay. All right, we will move on to new business. We have 9A. It's a request for a motion to approve a special land use permit, site plan, and a tree removal permit for 5 Points Community Church. Good evening, Director Cohen.
Mayor McDaniel and members of the City Council, this is a request from 5 Points Community Church to construct a 16,000 square foot addition on the north side of their existing building, which you can see in the red outline on the site plan. The property is located at the northwest corner of Walton Boulevard and Squirrel Road. The addition has been designed to meet the needs of the growing congregation, which has served our community since 1940. The addition will include new offices, a commons room, youth group rooms, a nursery rooms, and a large gathering area. Their plans call for the demolition of the southern wing, which was the original church, as well as the removal of a garage and existing one-story concrete block building located at the southwest portion of the property, which you can see in the red circle there. The total investment in the project is $3.2 million. Construction is anticipated to begin in May and be complete by December. The Plan Commission staff both recommend approval of the project. Chris Aller with AKA Architects is here representing 5 Points Community Church. He's here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Cohen. Before I introduce Mr. Aller. Council, any questions for member of staff? Mr. Knight.
There was a very, very fine rendering in the site plan. I assume we're only talking about phase one under this approval, and anything on phase two, there has nothing to do with the approval. That would have to be considered at another time.
That's correct. This is just phase one.
Yes, just phase one, and nothing that's on that phase two has anything approved.
Staff has reviewed phase two to make sure it's going to be okay, based on current codes, but we are only approving phase one today.
Excellent plan.
Council, any further questions for Director Cohen at this time? It's Mr. Aller, is that correct?
Aller.
Aller. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Anything you'd like to add as it relates to the project?
I think Mr. Cohen did a pretty good job at describing the project. It's been a pleasure working with him so far and his team. It's always nice doing a project in Auburn Hills. It's getting through the city approval process is usually very smooth and much better than other municipalities. We're happy to be here with representing 5 Points. They've had a lot of plans over the years and other things, and we're really excited and happy to have a project here that's funded, and we're ready to go. And if you have any further questions on specifics, I'll be happy to answer.
Excellent. Well, it looks like your team has rendered or designed, I should say, a pretty significant, great-looking building. So, Mr. Knight?
Just a historical note, it's been there forever. When I came in 57, when was the first church built there?
That I'm not sure of. I don't know if somebody from the church could answer that.
1949.
Okay, 49. It came in 57, so it wasn't that old. Okay, thank you. Yes, it's been a pillar of this community for 60 years that I know of.
Council, any further? Ms. Hammond?
Yes, thank you. Looking at this, you're gonna have the parking lot over towards the new senior development that's going up. And it's gonna be nicely buffered so that when you have those large crowds come to the beautiful church.
Yes, most of the parking is on the north side right now, and we do have, it's adequately landscaped with all the appropriate landscape buffers.
Okay, thank you. It looks beautiful, by the way. I can't wait. It needs it, sorry.
Thank you.
Excellent. Council, any further questions for staff or the petitioner?
I agree, the building looks quite nice, but I'm still a little reluctant about the softball field. I'm really sorry to see that go.
All right, Council, if there aren't any further questions, open for a motion to accept the recommendation from the Planning Commission.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Rebecki?
I move to accept the Planning Commission's recommendation and approve the special land use permit, site plan, and tree removal permit for 5 Points Community Church, subject to the conditions of the administrative review team.
Moved by Ms. Rebecki. Do we have support?
Support.
Supported by Mr. Knight. Any further discussion or comment? Madam Clerk, we are ready to vote.
Ms. Verbecki?
Yes.
Mr. Knight?
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Burmeister?
Yes.
Ms. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Kittle?
Yes.
Mayor McDaniel?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank me this evening. Appreciate it. Have a great night.
Thank you very much.
Moving on, under new business, council, we have 9B. It's a request for a motion to approve zoning of 2 listed parcels from B2 to General Business District to I1 Light Industrial District for rapid shred. Director Cohen, good evening again.
Mayor McDaniel, may we present both the rezoning and the site plan at the same time?
Absolutely. We'll call 9B and 9C.
Okay. Mayor McDaniel, members of the City Council, this is a rezoning request for Rapid Shred to rezone 2 parcels of land totaling 2.24 acres from B2 General Business to I1 Light Industrial. The site is located on the west side of Updike Road between Pontiac and Walton, just south and adjacent to the Al Facino's restaurant. Since the city's master plan depicts this property as non-residential, both Planning Commission staff recommend approval of the rezoning. Rapid Shred would like to construct a 21,000 square foot light industrial building. The new building will offer both off-site and on-site shredding services. The new structure is designed to meet their security and operational needs. It's noted that the building will be large enough to store all their vehicles inside, along with all their bundled materials. The total investment of the project is $1.1 million. Construction is anticipated to begin next month and be complete by October. We wish to advise the City Council that Rapid Shred has been an excellent partner. Knowing that the site is abutting residential, they have provided a substantial buffer between their building and the residential area, a 30-foot wide buffer with a berm and numerous trees and shrubs, and we appreciate them going above and beyond to protect our residents. The Planning Commission staff both recommend approval of the project. Scott Dennis is here along with Jim Reb. Jim Reb's at the podium. He's with Reb Construction. He'll be building the project for Scott. He's here to answer your questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Cohen. Council, any questions for staff at this time? Mr. Knight?
I'm in favor of what's happening here, but I have in the old days, back when I started, we never would have mixed industrial and business. And we're tending to do this now. Now, I have no problem with that. Is there any problem with, since they're little different uses, is there any problem, Mr. Cohen, with kind of spotting a few of one here among the other? Is that going to cause us any problems?
No, sir. One of the unique things about Updike Road as it's developed over the past 50 years, it's a mishmash of B2 and I-1 all mixed together. So you would have a restaurant next to a light industrial building. It's just the way we've historically developed. And they've all blended well. They all serve each other. So it didn't seem, for us, it seemed to make sense. It seemed to be consistent with the Updike plan to have this business come in. They're very, very clean industrial stored inside. And it's right across from GKN and Martin Rea.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to kind of go on record that that was not a problem so that somebody later on would not have objection. Thank you.
Council, any further questions for staff?
I have a quick one, please.
Sure, Ms. Hammond.
During the planning commission and all that, did anybody from Alpha Chinos, or was there any input from them as far as them being a neighbor?
No, they received the citizen participation letter along with the city notice, but they never contacted us. Or I don't believe did they contact you?
Sure. Yes, please do, sir. If you could, just before you speak, just state your name and the title of the corporation you represent.
Yes, I'm Scott Dennis. I'm the owner of Rapid Shred. I did meet with Alpha Chinos prior to sending out the public letter, and the owner is all in favor of the development. I showed him both the site plans and renderings, and he is 100% behind it.
Okay, and thank you. As long as you're still standing there, I have one more question for you. As far as truck traffic, are we talking large trucks or just kind of the ones that you see like on the news when they do a shred? And
Our trucks are the mobile shredding trucks. Right now we have 6 employees, 5 trucks. You'll see truck traffic at 8 a.m. The 5 trucks will go out. At 4:30, the 5 trucks will come back. Right now, probably 1 to 2 times a week, we'll have a semi come in to pick up the bales of paper. So no, it will not be heavy truck traffic.
Okay,
And I think to your comment too on the business, we do have drop-off surface for shredding, so it is a similar process to a commercial business zoning.
okay, so the large semi won't be coming around like at 6:30 in the morning to.
No, but we can specify shipping hours when they can come, so no, that will not be a notice.
Okay, thank you.
No backup alarms at 6:30.
Perfect. Council, any further questions? Sure, Mr. Kittle.
Just an operational question then. Do you guys, with all the shredded material, I mean, are you feeding the recycling machine for that, as far as the?
We have a baler inside the building. We want it all housed inside the building because of security. But those bales, they'll weigh about 2,000 pounds apiece. Those bales then we load on the semis that come, and we take those directly to a paper mill where it's pulped and it's all recycled.
And as far as the general public's access, is there a fee for them?
Yes, we have a nominal fee. People can bring thing by the bags or by the box and drop off and pay.
Nominal?
Roughly $5 a box.
All right, great, thank you.
Excellent. Council, any further questions, either for staff or the petitioner?
Your motion?
1 second, just so, Mr. Reb or Mr. Dennis, is there anything additional you wish to add as it relates to the project?
No, I think so. I appreciate finding a place in Auburn Hills. Absolute Shreds is the company that I purchased here in Auburn Hills. They've existed since 1997, and we bought them a year ago. Rapid Shred's been in business since '99, based in Grand Rapids, and I just look forward to staying in the community, and thank you for this.
Excellent. Thank you for your willingness to invest in our community. With that, council, if there aren't any further questions, I would be open for a motion. Mr. Knight?
I would move to accept the planning commission's recommendation and approve the rezoning of parcels 1414-151-024 and 1414-151-025 from B2 General Business to I1 Light Industrial District. The rezoning shall be referred as ordinance number 17-891.
Moved by Mr. Knight. Do we have support?
Support.
Supported by Ms. Hammond. Any further discussion or comment? We're ready to vote.
Mr. Knight?
Yes.
Ms. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Kittle?
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Verbecki?
Yes.
Mr. Burmeister?
Yes.
Mayor McDaniel?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And then council will also be open for a motion to accept the planning commission's recommendation as it relates to the site plan and the tree removal.
Mayor,
Mr. Knight?
I'll move to accept the planning commission's recommendation and approve the site plan and tree removal permit for Rapid Shredded, subject to the conditions of the administrative review team.
Moved by Mr. Knight. Do we have support?
Support.
Supported by Ms. Hammond. Any further discussion or comment? We're ready to vote.
Mr. Knight?
Yes.
Ms. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Kittle?
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Verbecki?
Yes.
Mr. Burmeister?
Yes.
Mayor McDaniel?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you for taking the time to meet with us. We appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Continuing on under new business, council, we have 9D. It's a request for motion to approve a special land use permit and a site plan for stadium, party store, and shopping centers gas station. Director Cohen.
Mayor McDaniel and members of the city council, this is a request from Stadium Party Store for approval to construct a 6-pump gas station on their site, which is located at the northeast corner of Pontiac and Updike Roads. To make room for the new gas station, the vacant Luca's Coney Island restaurant will be demolished. The existing Stadium Party Store will be utilized as the main retail building for the gas station operations. Construction for this project is expected to begin in May and take about 3 months to complete. It's about a $400,000 investment. The Planning Commission and staff both recommend approval of the project. Iden Calabat with Calabat Engineering, along with Ike Odish, owner of Stadium Party Store, are here to answer questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Cohen. Council, before we call the petitioners to the podium, any questions for staff? At this time, I'd like to call the gentleman to the podium. Sure, Mr. Burmeister, as he's coming up.
Mr. Cohen, have we done any research as to the gas station across the street? After the planning commission, we talked about why that gas station is out of business. And we had some speculations. Did we find out anything definite about that?
As far as we know that there is someone who's looking to open the gas station. I don't know the exact timing that will occur. The reasons why they went out of business or left is probably related to their management of the facility. We don't know specifically why. I think Mr. Keenan mentioned in the minutes that it was his thought that perhaps related to the recession, but probably related to the financial management of the occupant.
Okay, I know there's a lot of speculation. I was just wondering if we had anything confirmed or not.
No, they just closed up shop, if you recall, and just left. So I think it was just an issue perhaps with their bank where they no longer had appropriate financing.
All set, Mr. Burmeister? Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Iden Calabat with Calabat Engineering. Business address is 31333 Southfield Road, Suite 250 in Beverly Hills, Michigan. Not much to add to what Mr. Cohen introduced for the project as far as the site plan is concerned. Did also want to address the concern that Councilman Burmeister brought up with the gas station across the street. Typically, when you've got a mixed retail and fuel service station as a development whole, the intent is to use the gas station to generate traffic and promote the growth of the retail business. So that basic operation, for a number of reasons across the street, did not work. Now with the existing site that you have a existing and successful retail center. So the need for the gas station to generate that traffic is not there, as that traffic is already existent and utilizing the retail center right now, in particular the party store and the restaurants that are located there now. So in this situation, the fuel service will just add, will stimulate growth basically to the existing retail center, and also open up visibility to kind of help improve the retail strip center on the east end of the property, and overall increases tenancy.
Okay. Council, any questions for Mr. Calabet? Is that correct? Am I pronouncing that right? Mr. Burmeister?
You just mentioned for a number of reasons that did not work across the street. Do you know any of those reasons? Did I miss it?
No, I don't. I mean, there could be, like Director Cohen said, there could be any number of various reasons why. We didn't investigate it. You know, Mr. Odish feels confident that his investment in his property will be successful, and he's not putting himself into financial hardship by investing it too.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Sure, Ms. Rebecca.
I'm sorry to say, but I'm not in favor of this, whether it meets the intent of the land, but I think within a small area, we already have 2 other gas stations that have been struggling. I don't know if it's because of the speed limit or if it's the traffic flow pattern in that area, but I think that's part of the reason where the one across the street failed. The one up on the corner of Walton and Updike struggled. I believe they're still struggling. And I just don't know. I know it's your risk to take, but I just don't want the city to have another vacant gas station sitting right along this corridor that we're trying to improve. So I'm sorry, I respectfully just am not gonna vote for it.
Thank you. I'll go to Ms. Hammond first.
Thank you. Okay, it's my understanding that the restaurant's gonna be torn down, but you're gonna leave all the parking spaces and everything else between the already open store, which will be taking the money and everything else. I mean, there's a distance of over almost 52 feet between where the pumps will be and where you go to pay, if you're paying.
If you're paying inside, yeah. The reasons behind that had a lot to do with the location of the existing drive off of Updike. There were traffic safety concerns with having the gas station canopy closer to the building. It would adversely impact the traffic that was entering from that that approach drive off of Updike Road. So that's the reason for the separation. Typically, the state also historically has looked favorably upon a distance separation between, the sale of liquor and the fueling of gas, the retail fueling of gas. So it's, that separation is not uncharacteristic of a station like this. And it just was done mainly for traffic safety and traffic flow improvements for the site.
I think that's gonna deter a lot of people having to walk that far to pay the cash to get generally they say cash is cheaper than the credit, and I just think that's a big deterrent. But thank you.
Yep. Mr. Knight?
I go back to the days when there was a gas station on every corner, and I read with the planning commission, they ask all the questions that I ask about it. I look at it from another side, another point of view. There's a going business here, and adding the gas station is going to bring a few more 5 cents a gallon for sales. And so the gross for the corner will go up a little because they have another service. I would not vote for this if they were coming in to put in a brand new installation. because there isn't room for enough more installations. But since this is a going business, I was a skeptic of this beginning, but it does make sense to me. The people that want to only go to the store will go up there in the Summit, buy gas. They'll walk up and buy something. So I don't have any problem with approving it, but it's only because it's an existing successful business on the corner and actually improving the corner, I think. So it's just one point of view.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. Mr. Kittle?
I want to back up Councilwoman Verbecki. I just, when I go down the corridor, I mean, if you look at it, I'm looking at an aerial view on Google Maps right now, but so if you got the Speedway at University, and then you come up the road a bit, and then you've got the Passion Plaza, which I guess is the one that's now out of business, is called. And then we're looking at one across the street, the proposed one here. If I go up the road a bit, it's the Crystal Palace. Then I go up the road a little bit, there's a BP across the street from the Palace, and then there's a Marathon. I think they keep changing names up there. If I take Pontiac Road over to University by Domino's, there's a gas station. If I take Walton over to the corner of Perry, there's a gas station. I mean, I just look around, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 right there, and we're looking at an additional one. I can't support it. And asked, what kind of restaurant was gonna go in there. I think the response was a deli, and there's a deli right in that strip mall already with Dilly Deli. So when I look at the fact that there's an existing and successful, I think as you put it, retail center there, God bless you for that, but there's just too many gas stations, in my opinion.
Well, if I may comment toward that.
Sure, please do.
Mr. Mayor. To kind of highlight what Councilman Knight said, that, a lot of, Ike's owns this entire center. And if he was in a position where he's still making, a mortgage payment on the shopping center as a whole and still had considerable debt on the center as a whole, he would not be looking at doing something like this. The fact is that the shopping center is in good financial standing. The economic stability of the shopping center is there. So the addition of the gas station service, although it's not the most entrepreneurial thing for the area, is more of an improvement on the visibility of his site and kind of adds a new service commodity to his own operating business, which is the Stadium Party Store. So as that stands, he knows he's got the customer base that if he just sells gas to his existing customers who are in there, coming into his liquor store and buying product from there, that he would do all right. And he would, profit from that sale, and financially makes sense for him. The other aspect that this project would accomplish would be removing a existing structure on the corner of the site, which would vastly improve the visibility of that strip center that's at the east. Also, moving that existing tenant that is no longer operational in that structure, as it's vacant right now, would be moving back to that eastern shopping center. So the growth there and the tenancy, he's only got a couple more vacant spots. With the addition of the gas station, makes it much more desirable for retail tenants to say, I'd like a spot in that retail strip center versus one of the retail strip centers, that are up and down Updike. It adds a competitive edge to his retail center that separates him from some of the others in the area. So I think when we look at this, we have to look at it as the whole of the development and not just focused on another gas station in the area.
Okay. What type of, from a business planning perspective, and maybe you can't answer this, I don't know if there's an owner for the proposed gas station or the Stadium Party Store. But in terms, do you look at traffic counts? To look at the sustainability of another gas station, with the points that have been made, there's some pretty valid points that have been made by some council members here into the aspect of the Updike corridor is plentiful in terms of gas stations, and And, we have some vacant ones, understandably, down a little bit further south. Obviously, that's on the Pontiac side, but, so I'm just curious in terms of, what do you do from a business standpoint to prepare for this type of investment or to justify, besides, the fact that you're saying you have a successful business within the retail section?
Well, I think looking at traffic is the number one thing you do. What they looked at was the average daily traffic on Updike Road. There wasn't a detailed traffic study conducted on the impacts of this business on that corridor. That to this point hasn't been requested, so it wasn't done. I think the other thing that you would look into as a developer is if this project was going to cost you a significant investment in developing this project, then you'd want to make sure and look much more detailed at the traffic. So you would probably do a detailed traffic study. Given the size of the investment for Mr. Oddish here, he was comfortable with the average daily traffic reports and knowing the flow that's up and down Updike Road, and that he could capture some of that.
Okay. Council, any further questions? Mr. Kittle, are you all set?
I want to go again, but
Okay.
Maureen had her hand up over there.
Okay, I'll go to Ms. Hammond.
Actually, I just kind of want to ask the chief her opinion, because there are so many incidents. I mean, as a woman, I don't think I would stop by there because it is so far for me to walk per se at night or something. Do you see this as a possible problem with a crime type area set up with it being so far away?
I see your point, although I don't know that it's reason to not approve the station. It's been looked at by our staff, who did not see that as a particular challenge. That's all I can tell you.
Okay, because I just see, I don't know, I feel more comfortable when I know somebody inside the station or whatever can see if somebody's running after me while I'm pumping or trying to get into my car. Or that's only my own personal feeling, but I agree that they have the right to put on their property what they feel will work for them.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hammond. Mr. Burmeister?
I think part of the requirements for a gas station is that they have to be able to view the pumps at all times to where they cannot be obstructed. So that is one of the conditions. The other thing I'd like to echo Mr. Knight's comments is, I'm sorry, I don't know your last name. I only know you by Ike. Has ran a very successful business there for well over 25 years that I know of. And he is bringing a gas station, or he's attempting to bring a gas station. And I do believe that he will make a success out of it, because there's an additional building behind him additional business behind him called Dilly Deli that does a tremendous amount of business at lunch. So I think for those reasons alone, I think he's going to make it a go.
Thank you, Mr. Knight.
This is for Mr. Beckerleg. Unless we have something in our ordinance, or we pass something that says there can only be one gas station every 10 square miles, even if we don't like something, if this meets the requirements of our ordinance, isn't it prudent for us to allow it to happen even if we don't like it, unless we can prove health, welfare, and safety is an issue?
One of the approvals is a special land use approval, so you do have discretion. You just need to be able to set forth legitimate reasons as to why you're denying it. So,
Okay, because it's a special land use.
That's correct.
Okay, that's a good point. Thank you for clarifying that.
Mr. Kittle, did you have an additional?
Yeah, I was just gonna just go on the corner again. I mean, just from supply and demand, and I think back to my, economics days when you talk about price elasticity, and gas stations were always the key element in that lecture. And every gas station around there, which again, I'll go on the fact that I personally think, and my personal opinion probably doesn't matter in that regard, but I think there's too many. And I drive by 4 or 5 of those almost daily but I'll drive 2 miles further to get gas because I can go 2 miles and pick it up for 25 to 30 cents a gallon cheaper. So, you know, if you ask me what happened to the one store, maybe it's the mixed retail or whatever, but I still contend if you look at an aerial view of all the map, you know, the map and all the options for gas station, I don't think another one is needed. Now, that being said, it's your risk and your business and so forth. But my real issue is if I look at it from a city standpoint, what's in the best interest of the city, I think there's a lot of room for improvement on that corner, and probably seeing the restaurant torn down would be a good part of that. I'd like to see you come back with some other idea for an improvement to that site outside of a gas station.
Thank you, Mr. Kittle. Counselor, is there any further questions or comments? Did he want to
Add something?
Did he want to add anything? He's the owner of Stadium, correct?
Stadium, yes, correct.
Yeah, it'd probably be beneficial to have him introduce himself. Sir, could you just state your name?
My name is Akram Odish.
Okay.
I'm sorry. My name is Akram Odish.
Okay.
I own the Stadium Party Store since 1983 until now. If I am not businessman, you know, I'm not in this kind of business. I want to improve, you know, my business, you know, because the state, they give liquor license all over, you know. They are all over. We try to compete, you know. And the gas station here, you know, they're going to be, the price, they're going to be lower. This is good for customer too, you know. Plus, the Nick restaurant, they're going to move in a corner of my shopping center. I'm going to improve here, you know, they're going to be good view, you know, for shopping center. I know I'm able to do it, you know.
Sir, if you, I'm sure you've figured out that you think you can make the financial aspect of this work, but my concern, and I think some of the concern of the other council members, is not just that you can make the business model work for a combined party store gas station. Your party store, you've had, you know, I think good success over the years. And I think that everybody on this council would like to see that corner improved. But I think it's what does improvement look like, at least from my perspective. And a gas station isn't what I feel is going to be in the best interest of the city, and as we try to further develop that corridor. And I mean, I don't know if maybe you can buy the one across the street and develop this site into something even better and make more money, but.
I can't afford it, Council. I can't afford to buy $2 million, you know, gas station, you know. I'm gonna put $400,000, including, I got my store, I'm gonna feed the gas station from the store, you know. Yeah, $2 million, you know, it's hard. Nobody can give you $2 million, you know, to build gas station.
If it remains empty, I'm sure the price will come down, but no, that's regardless. That's my opinion on it.
Yeah,
So
no problem.
I appreciate it. I hope your party store remains viable, and whatever happens tonight, I hope, you know, wish you all success in the world. But
I like
that's
to do
just
it,
not my idea of an improvement for that corner.
Improvement, I'm gonna put nice gas station over there. You're gonna see it later. I hope so.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, if you drew a 1 square mile radius, there's 5 or 6 gas stations. So, I mean, we don't need one on every corner.
Every human being now, they have a car, you know. 5 people in a home, everybody have a car, you know.
All right.
Pretty soon the cars will be driving themselves and they'll all be electric. We won't need gas.
All right. Council, is there any further questions either for staff or the petitioner? Gentlemen, is there anything additional that you wish to add?
I guess one last point to Mr. Kittle's point about the corner is that the owner is looking to improve that corner, but he's also looking to take advantage of the valuable real estate of the corner of that shopping center for his own business, which is his party store and combination gas station. He did not want to try and build another or put another use there and try and rent that out to somebody else. He feels that the value of that corner is best in his hands, as he's made the entire property and development a success thus far.
Okay. Thank you. With that, council, it's before us for a motion.
Your Honor,
Mr. Burmeister?
move to accept the Planning Commission's recommendation and approve the special land use permit and site plan for the Stadium Party Store gas station, subject to the conditions of the administrative review team.
Moved by Mr. Burmeister. Do we have support?
I'll support it.
Supported by Mr. Knight. Is there any further discussion or comment?
I have a comment, Your Honor.
Sure, Ms. Mitchell.
I heard a lot of rich dialogue around this particular topic, and I respect the viewpoints that were raised. I value the fact that we have an applicant before us that wants to make a personal investment in our community, and it appears that he wants to be very hands-on with it. So although I will admit not to be an expert in regards to where fuel stations should be and where they shouldn't be, there are portions of the Opdyke corridor where I see multiple gas stations and they're very successful and viable. And there's portions where I see they close. And I'm not sure what the recipe is for success, but if we have an individual before us that's willing to invest their own funds in it, I'm willing to give them an opportunity. Now, I don't get 40 miles to the gallon like Councilmember Kittle in my vehicle, so I have to stop a little bit more frequently to get fuel. So for that reason, I will support this motion.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Mr. Knight?
One of the reasons that I believe this is the right thing to do is, I'm not sure what else you do on that corner. You build another building and it blocks off the current businesses so you can't see them. So it becomes a destination, which probably it is anyway, but it certainly it won't get any pass-by traffic. So I don't know a better way to put a building up there in that spot in place of the defunct building to make it work. That's why I believe this is a feasible way, and let the buyer beware. They're gonna put a lot of money into the pumps and the thing, and if they don't have a business case, fine. I don't think we'll ever see the gas station across the road ever open. Eventually, it'll be torn down and somebody will build something else because it's feasible. So, and if this is voted down, it's okay, I can certainly live with it, but I don't know of a better way right now that would enhance the corner, and so that's why I'm tipped that way.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Knight. The only make is, and I apologize, I'm gonna call you Mr. Ike because I'm gonna need a little bit more practice with the pronunciation, and I don't want to get it wrong with your last name. But the thing that I appreciate, Mr. Ike, is that you've been a successful small business owner within our community since 1983. I wish we would have had the foresight to see this gas station across the street, and maybe this project came beforehand so that maybe the circumstances were a little bit different for that petitioner. But with that being said, I mean, I don't want to hinder an opportunity for you to make your business even more successful and to, even though a lot of these comments that were made, I appreciate the council's viewpoints and I can understand the concerns amongst the Opdyke corridor and the many gas stations. But, with that being said, I'm going to support this because to Ms. Mitchell's comment in terms of your willingness to continue to invest in our community after you've invested and, you have a very nice store right there. Since 1983, you've been within our community. So for those reasons, I'm in full support of this. So, council, any further comments? If not, we have a motion and a support. We are ready to vote.
Mr. Burmeister?
Yes.
Mr. Knight?
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Verbecki?
No.
Ms. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Kittle?
No.
Mayor McDaniel?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you. You as well.
Mr. Mayor, I might just add
Sure.
that I voted no on both of the previous ones too, the Crystal Palace and the one that's closed. And if they weren't built, then I would have voted yes for yours because there would have been enough.
I appreciate the consistency. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, moving on to item 9E. Council, we have a public hearing and a request for a motion to establish a speculative building designation for Continental Property LLC. Good evening, Mr. Griffin. City Assessor Griffin, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. As stated, Continental Property LLC has requested a speculative building designation on their property. It's at the northeast corner of Harmon and Continental. It's about 137,000 square foot building, and it's on 9.28 acres. The speculative building designation is simply takes the rule or the requirement for the 6-month requirement away from the building, meaning right now, if you apply for an abatement, you have 6 months to start construction. When you apply, you don't have to do that with a speculative building status. They can build the building, and if they get a good tenant or a single user buyer at a later date, they can apply for the abatement at that time, which you have discretion to either approve or not. We've reviewed everything, which is in the packet, the staff. Because of the size and scope of the building, it's a perfect example of what a speculative building would be. It's tough to fill a building of that size, and it's a big risk. So we've recommend approval for this speculative building status.
Thank you, Assessor Griffin. Council, any questions for our assessor? Mr. Kittle?
For the assessor, maybe Mr. Cohen, we had one of the last spec buildings that was presented to us at the corner of Featherstone and Opdyke, northwest corner, was one that I voted against. And I guess the question that I have to either of you gentlemen is are we getting interest for spec buildings? I mean, I know we got a lot of movement still and companies that are looking to relocate and so forth, but I'd feel better if you told me that the spec building that we're constructing over by the Silverdome, had tenants lined up at the door, looking at it.
Well, my first comment would be if they build the building, they don't get any tenant to move in there or even to apply for an abatement, they're gonna be paying standard ad valorem taxes, so we're in a win-win situation.
But ultimately, we still want to occupy
We'd like it to
buildings,
be, exactly.
not vacant gas stations.
Yeah, it's a big building, times are much better. I would assume the applicant has given some serious thought and may have some folks looking at him already, or I don't know why he would build it.
Also, Ms. Hammond?
Yeah, is there a reason that the applicant wouldn't be here this evening?
He was out of town, and I tried to set it up for time so he could be back in town. I'm assuming he's not back in town.
Okay, because this is, as far as I've been on council, this is the first time I can remember an applicant not being in attendance when we're discussing the speculative building, so, thank you.
Council, any further questions for Assessor Griffin? Is there any, I don't know if there's any other concerns amongst council, but is there any other concerns as it relates to the petitioner not being here? Does council have any comments? Is there a time constraint on this, Mr. Griffin?
I know they'd like to begin construction sooner than later. I know they've already prepared
May,
the money
right,
to do that. But, I mean, from my perspective, there's not. I mean, from theirs, there may be, but it could certainly wait. But it does qualify in the council, even under a speculative building status. Anybody that would move into the building or become a tenant, they would still have to come before you and apply for the abatement, and you'd have the prerogative to either accept that or not. So it really doesn't make
change.
Big difference, other than the building may get started earlier.
Understood. Mr. Knight?
I have a little concern, not a great deal, but this is not a pressing issue. It can be done in 2 weeks from now. It's, I know in the past, we kind of like to talk with the person that's doing it, size them up, get a feel of what they're doing, and so on. And I'm sure this person's as good as any, but you never know that. And as soon as we start not talking with them and allowing somebody else to take the blame if they don't work out, I'm hesitant. I can vote on it tonight, but I'd rather talk to the person if the rest of you feel that way, but if you don't, it's okay. But I'd kind of like to hear from the petitioner.
Okay, well, before I open the public hearing, is there any additional comments as it relates to that particular item? Mr. Kittle?
If I just may ask a question, is Continental Property LLC, is that anyhow related to Continental, the business there? You know, this is their property limited liability company or real estate investment arm or
I
something?
don't believe so. It's, actually the owner is Joel Nosenchuk. He's been here before for site plan review and stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Mitchell?
My comments will fall along those of Councilmember Knight. I'm not violently opposed to us moving forward this evening, but I don't see any pressing time issue which necessitates us to do that. And my preference would be for the applicant to be in attendance when we made a decision upon this.
Director Cohen?
Just one piece of information. This project was approved by the city council in September of last year. Mr. Nosenchuk brought a site plan forward for a 137,560 square foot light industrial facility. He originally had someone on the hook, a company that he thought he was going to get. What he's explained to us is that he has to get ahead of the market, and he's willing to take the risk to construct the building so that he has a building ready when a company wants to make a selection. They have had their pre-construction meeting, and they like to start construction in the next 2 weeks. So that's a piece of information I just wanted to pass on to you. The project has been reviewed by council in the past.
Okay, great. Thank you, Director Cohen. Sure, Mr. Kittle?
Mr. Mayor, when you're ready, I'd throw the motion out there just to see if it flies. If you
Well,
wanted to.
let's open the public hearing and then we can go for that. So at this time, I'll open the public hearing at 8:23. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Please come forward at this time. Mr. Gordon? No? Mike? All right. With that, we'll close the public hearing at 8:23, and then we can try a motion either for the approval or an alternative to table it. Mr. Kittle?
I'd move to approve the request to establish a spec building designation for Continental Property LLC by adopting the attached resolution.
All right, moved by Mr. Kittle. Do we have support? Support. Supported by Mr. Burmeister. Any further discussion or comment?
Just to be consistent with my former spec building rash that I would break out with occasionally, and I like the concept of getting it on the tax rolls.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kittle. Ms. Rebecki?
And I do feel more comfortable after what Mr. Cohen shared with us about them already being before us, and we did already go through some of the due diligence part previously.
Okay, great. Any further discussion or comment, council?
Your Honor,
Ms. Mitchell?
if we are to move forward with this today, then I would ask that we ask them if they would like to start construction within the next 2 weeks. I would request that they come to our meeting on April 10th and just as an introduction, let us know what's going on. And if we can make that request to them, then I can support this motion this evening.
Okay, fair enough. We are ready to vote.
Mr. Kittle?
Yes.
Mr. Burmeister?
Yes.
Ms. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Knight?
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Verbecki?
Yes.
Mayor McDaniel?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Thank you, Assessor Griffin. We will move on to 9F. Council to request for motion to approve Fieldstone Lift Station Replacement Bid Award. Good evening, Director Melcher.
Good evening, Mayor McDaniel and members of the City Council. This past winter, the Fieldstone Golf Course staff discovered that 2 of the 5 pump stations, the storm system pump stations, had failed. The golf course staff did contact the DPW to help assist in extracting the pumps from the pits. Upon inspection of the pumps and the piping, check valves, the appurtenances within those 2 stations, DPW staff and Fieldstone staff determined that the entire assemblies need to be replaced. These are 20-year-old pumps. They've more than provided a useful service life, and they need to be replaced at this time. We are also adding a rail system to both of those stations to help DPW in the future to more easily extract those pumps without pulling the pipe assemblies and everything else out of the pit. DPW, or staff, is recommending the low bid of $51,810 to CSM Mechanical. Now, this project was unanticipated for 2017, not budgeted. After consulting with Finance Director Michelle Schultz, found that this will be a very minimal impact to the general fund. You'll find in the motion that you will be, if you choose to approve this, you'll be amending the general fund account with an increase for that expense of $51,810, as well as both the Fieldstone Golf Fund revenue and expense account. That being said, staff is ready to answer questions.
Thank you, Director Melcher. Mr. Knight?
Now that we replace this, will this go on a normal check every year and replace as needed and schedule? It sounds to me like this has gone 20 years and all of a sudden we got 3 bad ones. We haven't looked at them in the past. And so I'm wondering, when we put these in, will we put this on our pump inspection thing like we do the lift station on Gray and those?
Most definitely, Mr. Knight. Historically, Fieldstone Golf Course has stood on its own. DPW and Fieldstone will team up together to perform annual inspections and do the maintenance on all of the pumps within the golf course, just as we have with the sanitary lift stations.
Good. Thank you. Good answer.
Council, any further questions? If not, open for a motion. All right, we can go on to the next item, I guess.
Your Honor.
Mr. Burmeister?
Move to approve amending the general fund account number 101-901-999.501 with an increased expense of $51,810. Amend both the Fieldstone Golf Club Fund revenue account number 594-753-699.472 and expense account number 584-753-977.000 with an increase of $51,810 and award the Fieldstone lift station replacement to CSM Mechanical in the amount of $51,810 to be paid from the Fieldstone Golf Club Fund, account number 584-753-977.000.
Can you repeat that? All right, moved by Mr. Burmeister. Do we have support? Supported by Mr. Knight. Any further discussion or comment? We are ready to vote.
Mr. Burmeister?
Yes.
Mr. Knight?
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Verbecki?
Yes.
Ms. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Kittle?
Yes.
Mayor McDaniel?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. 9G, request for motion for introduction with intention to adopt ordinance 17-890 for unauthorized water usage. Director Melcher.
Good evening again, and as you stated, Mr. Mayor, this is the introduction and first reading of an amendment to the Code of Ordinances for the City of Auburn Hills, Chapter 74, Utilities. In recent years, we've found, and DPW has encountered several instances where contractors especially are utilizing our water system to construct their developments without approval. We do conduct pre-construction meetings prior to the beginning of the development. And with that, we do introduce that they need to, if they want to use city water, rent a hydrant meter. We designate a hydrant they can use, and that meter also has proper backflow protection. Now, when we go out to inspect these sites, we're finding, even though they've rented a meter, they're not using them. They have a hose hooked up without backflow prevention to the hydrant, using water for free. With this, staff has come together. We've asked Mr. Becker-Legg to draft some ordinance language that will give us something to hopefully curb this activity in the future. We believe that a $200 fine for each occurrence of this unauthorized water use will keep them from doing it in the future. With that, ready to answer some questions.
Thank you, Director Mulcher. I actually have some questions for this one. We don't have anything currently to cover water theft or an ability to enforce any type of fine or 90 days in the county jail. Water is expensive. And when a development such as that is utilizing water and not paying for it, right, especially when we go to the extent of providing them with a meter so we can track it. I think we just had this discussion about why we were losing water. Something wasn't adding up, right? And we had devoted a whole team effort. A lot of time and energy went into, in essence, auditing, our billing procedure, so on and so forth. So it's likely this has some contribution to that. So I'm just looking for either Mr. Becker-Legg, Chief Vocal. There's nothing that we can do when we catch someone stealing city water.
No, there's not, and that's why we drafted this. In addition to paying the fine, you will notice that we've also had a language in there saying they're responsible for the amount of water used. Now, I realize it might be tough to prove what that amount is, but in addition to the fine, if you can somehow say, well, this is how much water they utilize, you can also go after them for that too under this ordinance.
Okay, and I would imagine there's probably something that's got, I don't know, maybe there's a legal jargon that has to be reasonable. I'm wondering, can we make a fine larger than $200?
You can make it up to 500, but you can't go past 500.
Okay. Honestly, I think they should have a $500 fine. We are very proactive development, right? We clear a pretty clear path for developments, businesses, corporations to do the right thing, right? We help them do the right thing. If they're not gonna do the right thing, I personally want them to pay the most we possibly can make them pay for situations such as that. That, when I saw those pictures, that makes me a little bit agitated. So, council, with that, if there's any comments or questions, Mr. Knight?
Well, I'll add to that, 500, 200, whatever it is. Normally, if somebody's stealing water, you don't know how many they use. So we ought to put a fee for every day that they've been hooked up. It's another 300 hours or something.
That is covered in the ordinance.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and it's what?
So every single day it happens, each day counts as a separate occurrence.
Oh, I see. I thought you just fined them once for catching them. Oh,
No,
okay.
it's in the very last sentence of the ordinance.
So, question, so if, obviously I know we have ordinance officers, right? But if a building inspector, just a city employee has to witness this, correct?
Somebody's got to witness it, right?
Okay. Mr. Knight, did you have anything additional? Okay. Mr. Kittle?
I too, I'm glad you mentioned it. I thought the fine was way too light and, to a point where $200 might not even, yeah, and even 500 might. I don't know how many of those tanker trucks you would fill up, before it's, the business case justifies the theft. But at 500, I think it's, a bigger deterrent, but, obviously it puts the onus on us to catch them. I would say at what risk, the backflow prevention is one that has me a little more concerned maybe than the water loss. If we contaminated or if they contaminated our system because of the lack of a backflow prevention device, what does that do to us? And what are the downstream costs and risks associated with that?
Could be very significant, depending on what the contamination is. If it was chemical of some sort, even a boil water alert wouldn't help anybody. It could cause severe illness and maybe even death to the community if it's entered into the system in significant concentration.
There's a lot of sensitivity towards water quality in this state these days, and I mean, can there be criminal charges associated with the fine or anything like that?
It is a misdemeanor. The ordinance provides that it is a crime.
So, Mr. Becker, like, to Mr. Kittle's point, so we have, you know, two things we're kind of talking about here, and I apologize if I missed it in the proposed ordinance amendment. But we have a failure to use a backflow, and then we have stealing of water. Is it possible that we could find both of those if both of those existed
Well,
separately?
the backflow issue was, I was not advised about that, so I didn't draft the ordinance to address that issue. It only addresses stealing water.
But could we very easily put in there, for instance, in, you know, both of those items, right? If you have one or the other, right, that's 500. But if you are at fault for doing both or guilty of doing both, then that'd be 500 for each of those.
We could add that to the ordinance.
Can we
Mr.
also,
Kittle.
could they then be responsible for any costs associated with contamination of the system?
That depends. You know, I think that it would be reasonable to draft an ordinance to include that. Because the ordinance right now, again, it was never intended to address the backflow issue. And that's a legitimate issue. And we can make
Well,
in addition to it. But just finishing, right now it does talk about if you're stealing water and you fill up a truck and the city comes out and they say, this is how much water is in the truck. You know, in addition to paying the fine, they are responsible for the cost of the water, if you can quantify it, which sometimes maybe you will, sometimes maybe you won't. For the backflow issue, you know, we could certainly say, we could do something similar to that.
So, Director Melcher, in terms of checking or testing for contamination, that's something we would have to hire a consultant to do. That's not something our staff can actually do.
Our staff can check minimally a chlorine residual in the water, which would indicate that there would be no bacteria contamination or pathogenic type of contamination that would cause illness. As far as chemical goes, that would require a lab.
So, to Mr. Kittle's point, what I would personally like to see, and I'd like to maybe have some discussion about it, is if we could have some language in there, one, to cover the cost of any contamination, but furthermore, if caught, automatically the cost to make sure there is no contamination, and if that is to do a laboratory test, whatever that is, they should bear those costs as well to ensure that we have, because, you know, to Mr. Kittle's point,
Well,
water quality is
it is, and I hear that, but you have to remember, we have to prove they did something wrong. They don't have to prove they didn't do something wrong. So I think you could build language saying, you know, that if through improper actions they cause the backflow or contamination, and that's proven, then you can seek the cost for it.
Okay.
Including the testing, but I think you've got to establish that they did something first. You can't just accuse somebody of stealing or causing a backflow issue, and then charge them to do the cost of the testing. I mean, I can build it in there, but it's going to have to be based upon them being found guilty of it.
okay. That's fine, as long as we're covered. However, we have to do it legally, but I think we should definitely give that some thought. I'm sorry, who was Ms. Hammond?
Well, I'm gonna take it a step farther. Can we put in there and change it to where if it happens twice, that we can stop construction?
Probably not.
I mean, a lot of times it's going to be, I mean, granted, it's going to be the contractor or subcontractors that are doing this, so I don't know that we would want to fault the actual developer.
And that's exactly my point. I mean, I guess if you could prove it was the general contractor that was responsible for it, then maybe, or the developer, maybe. If it's a contractor that goes out and does it, maybe without the knowledge of the property owner or the developer, I don't think you can shut the project down.
But I think that if we did put some wording in there, and they're told in the beginning of the process, you're gonna be held responsible for this, so you better make sure your subcontractor's doing the job right. I think it just holds their feet to the fire, making sure that they're doing things that they should be doing.
We have built in the ordinance language that talks about that the property owner can be responsible for the subcontractor's actions, but that's shutting down the whole project. That's a whole different issue.
I just think it's gonna cost them more if they're worried about their project being shut down and not completed on time than fining them.
Okay. Hold on, I have Ms. Verbecki first.
Just a quick question to piggyback what Ms. Hammond was saying. Don't the contractors, subcontractors have a license with the state that we could do something to put, a complaint against their license so that they wouldn't be able to do work in the state of Michigan?
You can certainly file a complaint. Yeah.
But that's not something we would put in our ordinance?
No.
Okay.
Definitely not.
Mr. Burmeister?
Going back to the release of, let's say, hazardous material or chemicals into the water system, don't we have something in the cost recovery regarding hazmat
We
release?
do, and I don't have it sitting in front of me, but there are a couple of locations in our ordinance that talk about persons that are responsible for hazardous spills and whatnot being responsible for paying the cost of those, right? Couple, 2 or 3 places, I believe.
Okay, I wasn't sure if we needed to write something in for this as well, but, okay, thank you.
Mr. Kittle?
To me, it's a deterrent thing. I mean, if it's the subcontractors, I think, you know, in our pre-construction meetings or whatever with the developers, I mean, if you emphasize with strong language to them, the need for them to hold their subcontractors accountable to this, you know, I think the message would get out. You know, I look at it from myself. You guys have heard me talk about these backflow prevention tests, you know, as a resident. You know, the letters that I get from the city and the strong language in them, you know, is mind-boggling to the actual, you know, the typical resident water user, and talking about, you know, the risks associated with backflow. So to me, if we caught somebody that had a tap without a backflow prevention, there's already the concern that would say, hey, what's to say that you haven't sucked something into the system, and, you know, almost put the onus on them. But, you know, I think I would do a press conference on this thing. I would invite the media. You know, I would let the, you know, communications to all our developers and let them know that we're really, really serious about this, and we're gonna hound them. Because it's just unacceptable. There's not many things that really get me riled, but this riles me that people are abusing it in this manner.
Thank you, Mr. Kittle. To Director Melcher, first of all, thanks for bringing this to our attention. I think it's an important topic, right? Because how many years now have we had to increase water rates to our residents? And then, you know, now we have, you know, found out that a lot of our contractors or subcontractors are stealing. So I think the point is loud and clear that, you know, I think what I would actually propose that we do is to either table or postpone any action on this and let staff and our attorney kind of come up with some additional language. I think they understand that we want to make this as harsh or, you know, strict as possible. You know, if staff is comfortable with moving forward with that direction.
I think that's a good idea, because generally when you put something on first reading with the intent to then have a public hearing on it, there might be minor modifications. Adding the whole backflow contamination is a whole different thing, so I would think that would make a lot of sense not to place it on first reading.
Okay, and we're definitely getting close to that season where this may become an issue, and I think that let's get it right
We're still
the
gonna put
first
it on the
time.
forefront, but I think there's so much, the ordinance is gonna be so much different that I think you should not put it on first reading.
Okay. Did you have something, Mr. Tangi?
I do. Mr. Melcher, is there an indication of how many instances where we know this has occurred, at least recently? I mean, can you throw out a number of how many times we've actually legitimately caught someone?
5 or 6 this past year, would you say, Mark?
Mark, could you come up, please, and just speak into the microphone? Everybody's very interested at home to hear what you have to say.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, Council. 5 or 6 in the last year, and the problem is that a couple of these contractors are larger contractors, and we've caught them numerous times. So it's not one time, it's not 2 times, and we don't have anything to hold their hands to the fire, so it's hard to stop it.
Absolutely, I agree.
And that's the 5 or 6 that we've caught. I don't know how many that we haven't, because we don't have the resources to have people out on all the jobs. We have a lot of development going on right now, and we don't have the people to put at all those spots every day.
No, for sure. I mean, and obviously enforcement's another issue, and we understand it's likely not gonna be something that we're gonna be able to proactively every single day check up on. But to your point, there's been times where you've come across it, and to not be able to have any type of teeth to really.
To curb
put
that
them
behavior.
Right, to put them and hold them accountable is a little bit challenging, so, go ahead, Mr. Tangi.
Mr. Mayor, by no means am I trivializing it. The reason I wanted to put that out there is because sitting at home, you might be thinking, is this happening hundreds of times, the way they're all talking?
But to that point, Mr. Tangi, we really don't know how many times, right?
We don't,
But we've caught the same people
Right.
5 or 6 times.
But what we do know is what we do know. And I just wanted to make sure that that's
Right.
on the record, that this isn't something that we think is, actually causing everyone else's rates to go up. But we do know it is.
I understand that, but I think to the same token, from a resident standpoint, right, when we're asking them, right, to increase their water rates, I think, we need to make sure that we can deter
completely
this
understand.
from occurring, and I want to make sure that everyone knows, not just our residents, but obviously the people that are doing this, that we are extremely serious about, putting a stop to this and enforcing this to the absolute most that the law will allow us to do. So, but point definitely noted. So, Mr. Kittle.
And to that point, Mr. Mayor, that's why I think you can actually use the media to your advantage, social media and traditional media, to get the message out, just due to the fact that we don't have 10 guys running around just checking to see if there's water theft, but letting the world know that we're serious about it. And I still, it comes down to the contamination. Forget the money part of it. If we got, one, water district that got contaminated, because some moron sucked a bunch of stuff out of a tanker truck, and it backflowed into the system, that's the issue to me.
Mr. Burmeister.
Have we caught any residents doing this, bypassing meters?
No, we have not.
Okay, because this would affect our residents as well that are committing a crime.
That's correct.
As it should. Mr. Knight.
I was just gonna make a comment. I'm glad you reported how many there were, because I looked at those 3 pictures and I said you couldn't steal enough water with that little hose to make any difference. But the backflow thing is the key. There was no backflow on it. But I looked at that little hose and I said, but I'm glad to hear, that it's some major guys.
Well, I understand what you're saying, Mr. Knight, in terms of the hose, but one thing that I will mention, and this was many, many years ago when a home next to mine was getting built. And so, not that they were stealing water from the city, but they were stealing water from me. And so what they'll do is you get a 50, 100, 150-foot hose, and if you need water in the unit next to you, you'll run that hose over there, you'll turn that spigot on, and you'll throw it in the bathtub. And so that water just continually runs, and when I need it, I just have to go to the bathtub and pick up that hose. I don't have to walk all the way to Mr. McDaniel's house and turn on his spigot. So to that point, that hose could be constantly running to wherever it is that they're needing that water. And it does not take that long for those gallons to add up when it's turned on consistently. We can ask the young lady in the south end who was trying to chase away the turkeys. It doesn't take long to get a $2,000 water bill. So anyways, I think we've kind of beat this to a pulp. No action required, or do we need a motion to table? Okay, thank you, Mr. Micheling and Director Melcher.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we'll move on to 9H. It's a request for a motion to approve the purchase of a reserve ambulance. Chief Manning, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Before you tonight for consideration is a recommendation to purchase a 4th ambulance. Excuse me. This ambulance would serve as a reserve ambulance that will fill in when a current ambulance goes out of service for preventative maintenance or in a case where we have a mechanical failure. Coincidentally, just this weekend, yesterday, we had an unexpected failure on one of our ambulances, which is currently out of service. Will not be back in service until tomorrow morning. So we know this does happen. Before I get started into the actual ambulance, I'd like to give you a brief overview of our EMS operations and where we're at today, because we've had some significant changes in the past month. due to our staffing increase, which have provided some very positive benefits to our EMS operations. As you know, after many years of operating a joint venture with a private EMS company, we transitioned to a sole responsibility of delivering advanced life support services on May 1st of 2014. At that time, we only owned 2 ambulances and only 1 station was staffed daily, so that having 2 ambulances, 1 being a spare, was adequate. Shortly thereafter, we added 9 hours of daily EMS coverage in the north end, the District 3, due to extended response times during peak hours when traffic conditions in the city are most congested. This meant then, at that time, that both of our ambulances were in service. Unfortunately, in February 2015, one of our ambulances was involved in a very serious crash and it was totaled out and taken out of service. Following that, 4 months later, we had another misfortune. In June of 2015, the second ambulance experienced serious mechanical issues and was taken out of service. Fortunately, we were able to get by with the gracious offering from City of Rochester Hills. And we borrowed an ambulance for several months as we got through that process. After the 2 ambulances were replaced, a 3rd ambulance was purchased as a reserve in October of 2015. The 3rd ambulance was purchased to fill in when one of the 2 ambulances, frontline ambulances, went out of service, again with a goal to minimize interruptions in our EMS operations. In August of 2016, residents approved a Headley override based on hiring additional fire personnel to be assigned to each station to reduce response times. This staffing plan places the 3rd ambulance into service. Through the Headley override and the SAFER grant, we were able to hire 7 additional full-time personnel. I'm pleased to report that 6 of the new personnel have completed their orientation field training program, basically an internal fire academy, and they are currently working on the shifts. The 7th position and 7th firefighter has been hired. He was hired behind the first group due to some hiring processes, during some issues during the hiring process, but we got through all of that. And he is currently in the training program, and it's a joint venture with the City of Rochester, Rochester Hills Fire Department, who also have several new recruits going through the initial training program. Currently, stations 1 and 2 are staffed 24/7. This is a big change. This took effect on February 18th, and Station 3 is staffed 9 hours a day during peak hours. Our goal is to have all 3 stations staffed 24/7 once we meet all of our staffing, fill all of our staffing positions on the shifts, and with the potential of changing to a different shift rotation in the near future. Since the 18th of February, emergency response times in District 1, where the new staffing was added, have dropped to an average of 5 minutes and 17 seconds. This is compared to a response time of 7 minutes and 11 seconds for the previous 6 months. And if it was not for 2 incidents where ambulances had to respond from outside the district because District 1's ambulance was already on a call, we would have had a response time under 5 minutes in that district. Prior to staffing Station 1, we transferred an average of 19.66 EMS calls per month to STAR or mutual aid partners such as Rochester Hills or Independence Township. Since the 18th and staffing of Station 1, we have transferred a total of 3 incidents. 2 of these incidents occurred while personnel were fighting a fire at 2 separate fires, and STAR was covering our city during that while the structure fires were active. The 3rd incident occurred when STAR was scheduled to cover our city previously during the firefighter Deering Memorial. Since the transition to full in-house EMS operations back in 2014, we have collected over $1.4 million in revenue. The EMS revenue is exceeding the added operational costs of staffing 3 stations and the ambulances. I'm very pleased with the progress of our EMS operations. As mentioned in our new staffing model, puts all 3 of our current ambulances into service, using the same logic as we did when we purchased a 3rd ambulance to cover when we only had 2 ambulances in service. We believe it is important to have a reserve ambulance for times when a frontline ambulance goes out of service, just as we experienced in the past. As staff started researching a potential reserve ambulance, we learned that Independence Township was in the process of switching their relatively new fleet of ambulances over to new model based on the topography within their township, primarily the rural roads that they have. The ambulance that they have for sale right now is a 2015 wheel coach ambulance. It's based on an international medium-duty chassis. The international medium-duty chassis is a heavier duty chassis than what we currently deploy at the van chassis. The 2015 wheel coach has a 20,760 miles on it. Independence purchased it new in 2014 for $182,302. Their current price is at $125,000. Today, the replacement cost to replace a medium-duty chassis ambulance of this caliber is at the $238,000 mark. And primarily, the significant increase is based on national standards, safety standards that have gone into the ambulances that have increased their cost significantly. The proposed ambulance was inspected by our mechanics as well as our fleet manager, Dan Brisson. As noted in your packet, there were no major mechanical issues. There are some minor issues that need to be corrected, but no expected cost to be minimal. We would need to replace the lettering and labeling insignia on the ambulance, and we've got an estimated cost of about $1,500 to do that. Calculating a depreciation cost and a current market cost of an ambulance or a fire apparatus is somewhat difficult because Kelley Blue Book doesn't advertise used ambulances. But I was able to locate an article from a fire apparatus broker that provides a depreciation scale to use as a guide. In the first year, they state that 15% is reduced, and then the second year, 10%, third year, 10%, and then the subsequent years fall off to 7 and then 5%. Using this formula, the 15, 10, and 10, if you take that with the formula or use that against the price that Independence paid for the ambulance, it comes out to right now, it's a little over 2 years old, $125,516. And then from there, you also have to factor in considerations such as the condition of the ambulance and the mileage and so forth. We know that the condition of the ambulance is very good, like new conditions, interior, exterior is in excellent shape. It has relatively low miles at 21,000 miles. And then you have to also look at the make and model of the ambulance. Wheel Coach is a well-respected manufacturer of ambulances in the EMS service. And Dan Brisson and myself, we both have examined the vehicle and we believe it is a good value to the city. We do have available funds in the budget, the fleet budget. In the 2017 budget, there was $500,000 earmarked for fire apparatus. That was the original intent to replace a fire engine. However, with the new staffing model and staffing of the stations and reevaluating our fleet, I am not recommending replacing one fire engine. This provides us with the funding to purchase the Independence Township ambulance. As we were working through the process of examining the proposed ambulance, we came to the conclusion that this was a viable option. Not wanting to miss out on a good opportunity, we sent a letter to Independence Township Board and the Township Supervisor advising them of our intent to purchase, with the caveat that the purchase would have to be approved by our City Council before we can move forward. Last Tuesday, the Independence Township Board met and approved the sale of the ambulance to Auburn Hills, pending our council's approval tonight. We have researched existing warranties on the ambulance. Emergency equipment and accessories in the patient area had a 12 to 24 month warranty, which means they have expired. However, the chassis is still under warranty. The basic warranty is 36,000 miles or until September of this year, so we have a little bit of time left on that. Other items that are covered beyond September of this year and extended time are the engine is covered up to 100,000 miles, no date. The frame rails are covered up to, there's no restrictions, no mile restrictions. And the cab and cowl structure, no mile restrictions. And I'm sorry, I misspoke when I said the engine. The engine's covered up to 100,000 miles or until September of 2019, whichever comes first. So with all of that said, having a backup ambulance is important to our EMS operations, obviously. I believe the proposed ambulance from Independence Township is a very practical option, affordable option that meets our needs. And I would recommend that the approval of the purchase. With that, this time I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chief Manning. Mr. Burmeister?
You said you're using this as a reserve ambulance. Why won't you use this as one of the front runners? I've seen the condition of some of the ambulances at Crittenden. I would rather see this as a frontline vehicle instead of sitting in a station. and trying to get some of the warranty use out of it.
Well, I agree and I understand where you're coming from, and I agree with that. We will evaluate that. In our budget process, we are calling it a reserve ambulance, but yes, we do regularly shuffle our fleet based on looking at forecasting our mileage and our use in certain areas. So to say that this is just a backup ambulance, that would not be totally accurate, that it could be a frontline ambulance right away. But then it would allow us to have a reserve ambulance, adding a fourth ambulance to our fleet.
Okay, so it is gonna be, you are looking at putting this on the front line.
I expect it will be, based on the reasons that you've already stated. It is a more heavy-duty ambulance, offers more options than we have on some of our other ambulances.
And we got 2 years left on warranty.
All set? Sure. Mr. Knight?
Just a curiosity question, is there an hour meter on the engine?
Yes, there is, and I don't have that right now with me. We did look at it in the inspection, and it was relatively low, but I don't have that with me right now.
Ambulances tend to get a lot of hours on the engine because they set idling and that, but this is a diesel engine. Once we get this vehicle, we're gonna change our whole thought about ambulances in the future. This is a medium-duty truck with a heavy-duty engine, which will go 250,000 miles hour-wise, and will not wear out because it's a medium-duty truck. We've been using light-duty pickups to, 1 tons, and they don't last very long.
This will be our second medium duty. This is our second medium duty ambulance.
It's moving in the right direction, you would agree. Yeah, that's an asset to get it just what it is.
Excellent. Council, any further questions or comments? I'd like to thank the chief for the thoroughness of the proposal here. I think that it's definitely going to bring some significant value to our community here, and it's a great purchase, and it's a good find. So I appreciate the effort to go and negotiate that with Independence Township. With that, I'd be open for a motion for the purchase.
I'd like to move it if I can find it.
Sure, Mr. Knight.
How about I move it? I've got it up. Move to approve the purchase of a 2015 wheeled coach ambulance from Independence Township in the amount of $125,000.
Moved by Ms. Hammond, supported by Mr. Knight. Is there any further discussion or comment? We're ready to vote.
Ms. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Knight?
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Verbecki?
Yes.
Mr. Burmeister?
Yes.
Mr. Kittle?
Yes.
Mayor McDaniel?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thanks again, Chief Manning.
And thank you for your support.
9I, it's a request for motion to terminate the brownfield plan for Oakland Technology Park and to remove the tax capture district from the tax roll effective as of December 31st of 2016. Good evening, Director Marius.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. Tonight you have before you a motion to terminate the Oakland Technology Park Brownfield Plan. This plan was approved in 2010 by the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority and City Council for the 211 vacant acres of land and the 28 lots along High Meadow Circle, Cross Creek Parkway, and Deepwood Drive in the Oakland Technology Park. To date, this is a thriving business district with few lots left to build. All of the conditions of this plan have been met, and although the plan officially expired as of December 31st, 2016, our consultants at AKT Peerless recommended taking official action to terminate the plan and notify all external taxing jurisdictions. On February 28th, 2017, the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority formally terminated the plan and recommended termination by City Council as well. I'm available to answer any questions you may have regarding the termination of this plan.
Thank you. Council, any questions for staff? If not, open for a motion. Open for a motion to terminate the brownfield plan for Oakland Technology Park and remove the tax capture district from the tax roll effective December 31st of 2016.
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Kittle.
Support.
Supported by Ms. Hammond. Any further discussion? We're ready to vote.
Mr. Kittle?
Yes.
Ms. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Knight?
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Verbecki?
Yes.
Mr. Burmeister?
Yes.
Mayor McDaniel?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Marius. 9J, request for motion to approve tree funds for eligible expenses for the amphitheater and splash pad project. Good evening, City Manager Tangi.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, this has been a long-awaited project that we've been working toward. Over the last couple of years, the Auburn Hills Community Foundation has been raising funds toward the completion of our amphitheater project, plaza area, and motion-activated children's splash pad at our park in the downtown. To date, we have raised a little over $500,000 in terms of the Community Foundation's effort. The Auburn Hills Tax Increment Finance Authority has contributed $400,000 towards the project. And we are trying to reach a target estimate of about $1,030,000, $1,050,000 for the project. In order to do so, we've taken a look at the project a little further to determine where we might be able to save on some of the expenses. One of the ways we've done that is to utilize some in-house labor instead of contract service. That appears in your memo. There's a savings there of $42,500. So when you add the $500 from the Community Foundation, $400 from the Tax Increment Finance Authority, and $42,500 of utilization of in-house labor, add in within that a 15% contingency, and the total of $1,030,000, it is built in. We're short about $100,000. We have about $100,000 in expenses that are eligible under the tree fund, have to do with plantings, irrigation, and some other components of that work. And so before you tonight is our opportunity to finally launch the project. We're really down to this last $100,000. And if we are able to utilize the tree fund as a source of funding, we will have the project completely funded, and we will be able to announce moving forward with a process of going out to bid. It also has to go to the Planning Commission yet, so Planning Commission will review it. It will then come back to City Council for a final site plan approval. But simultaneously, we can begin working on getting documents ready for a request for proposals.
Thank you. Mr. Tangi, is there any questions for the city manager or a member of staff? Mr. Knight?
I heard what you say, and I hope it's true. Over $100,000 on drainage and stuff that's a legitimate tree fund? It's really gonna be that much, it's legitimate costs from there? I just wanna make sure that they're legitimate, otherwise it's a loan.
We, you may recall, and I don't know exactly when it occurred, but we did broaden the definition of what the tree fund dollars could be utilized for. And so the DPW has, along with engineering, has reviewed everything in detail and made a determination that those are the things that are eligible under the tree fund definition.
Perfect. Council, any further questions? Mr. Kittle? Sorry.
So unless I missed it, so if we do this, is this the kickoff of the project? I mean, is this basically we're going?
Well, it's designed, it needs to be bid. So yes, this would confirm that the dollars are in place to begin the project. So we would, again, we have to go through a process right now of readying the documents for going out to bid, and then the process of going through Planning Commission approval.
And with the intent of getting that done and started this year?
It would start this year. Obviously, we'll have to see what kind of results we get from the bid process, but our intention would be to start this year. It would not finish up likely until 2018. I think it just depends on how quickly we get it started this year.
And Ms. Schultz has done all the calculations to know how much it's going to cost to maintain this on an annual basis?
She knows where every penny is.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Ms. Rebecki?
Mr. Tangi, can you tell me what the balance is right now in the tree fund?
It's about $520,000, and there's around $20,000 or so obligated to a couple of projects. So that's why I'm using the approximately $500,000 number.
Mr. Burmeister?
Is the tree fund gonna be utilized to, are we going to continually drain the tree fund for the maintenance operation or upkeep of it, or is that gonna be a qualifier?
No, that's not, that would not be utilized. It'll come through our parks maintenance.
Okay.
Your Honor.
Ms. Mitchell?
Okay. Mr. Tangi, can you remind me, what was the broadened definition or criteria that we decided upon around what was acceptable and non-acceptable expenditures under the tree fund?
I'll have to rely on someone either from Public Works or engineering on that one. Or Mr.
Mayor.
Rice.
I have some language that was shared with council back in, I believe it was February or March of 2014. And basically, the language was funds to be used for tree and landscape improvement and/or the reestablishment or restoration of planting materials on public lands or in the public right-of-way. Funds may be used for planting materials, site preparation, including all supporting infrastructure. Infrastructure including but not limited to irrigation, planters, tree grates, protection systems, and Indian all equipment and supplies for the successful establishment and maintenance of all planting materials.
Thank you. So it says establishment and maintenance, but if I heard your response correctly to Councilmember Burmeister's inquiry, we're only looking at doing this for establishment. Is that correct?
The ongoing maintenance of the park will not come from the tree fund.
And should this not be the source that's approved to obtain this $100,000 funding, how much longer would we anticipate would be required through fundraising activities to secure that amount of money?
I don't know that I could predict that we would be doing the project anytime soon. We have been raising funds for 2 years, and we're at a standstill. We have sold brick pavers. We've had both private and corporate donations, and that's come to a halt.
So in 2 years, it's been a little over $900,000. Is that accurate to say?
Well, the 400,000 is from the Tax Increment Finance Authority, and a little over 500,000 has been raised for the from the foundation. So 2 years has been 500,000, a little over 500,000 raised, and 400,000 from the TIFA.
I need a little process time. No further questions at this time.
Ms. Hammond?
Doing this, it's still gonna be done in phases, because I fully am on board with the amphitheater. I think it's needed down there. I still question the feasibility of the splash pad and the cost of maintaining all that. So it will be done in steps, correct?
Well, this would be phase one. So there is a
But we're
river
working
walk.
the amphitheater part first, is what my guess basic question would be.
I don't know if Tim wants to comment on what, I mean, it's all part of the completion of phase one. So the splash pad, the plaza, everything is really kind of phase one. There are other phases of the Riverwalk that includes pathway system, bridges, things that connect to the other park. But this is the first part of that phase, these 3 items.
Good evening, Tim Judici from OHM.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Yes, the project that encompasses phase one is the amphitheater and the, as Mr. Tangi indicated, the water play area, the splash pad area that we've been calling it, is a relatively small component that's integrated into the tiered levels of the amphitheater, just next to the amphitheater. So it's all part of the same phase of the project.
Okay, so if we go ahead and move forward, then you're saying that it's combined and there's no backing out of changing our mind if we want the splash pad?
Could certainly not be constructed. Would be an option.
I mean, I guess we could always, when that comes, we can always make adjustments, because again, it's going out to bid. We don't know with labor and construction what the cost is exactly going to be.
There will be specific line items associated with the construction of the splash pad, so there will be a direct cost that you'll be able to see.
But I also think it's important to note that when we sought, I guess, people to contribute money to fundraising efforts, right? A plan was established in terms of what we would see at this place. So it's people bought into or contributed with, the expectation, I think, that we would carry out this plan to the best of our ability according to what we, had presented.
That is very accurate. And in fact, one of your council colleagues made a very substantial donation to the splash pad specifically. So I think we have at least one corporate donation or maybe 2 that are specific to the splash pad. So, you know, unless, if we were to nix that, we'd have
Yeah,
to,
and I mean, clearly, you know, obviously, without knowing what the cost of everything would be, right, still, the ultimate decision would lie with this body, but to that token, I would not want to, you know, tell someone that that's the plan, right, and then all of a sudden, do a kind of a bait and switch. I don't think that's appropriate, right? We sought after those funds, we told them what the project was. To that point, I know that Mr. Knight gave a substantial donation for that exact line item, so. Mr. Knight, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'm gonna react to that. It's all or nothing. Don't come in with me and say, hey, we're gonna do this in steps, and when we run out of money, we're gonna stop. You're either gonna do a splash pad and the whole thing, or don't get started. And if it goes overrun, then we're gonna have to find the money, or you're gonna give back some contributions that were committed for that, and as in ours, there's some big ones in there, so that this is an all or nothing, and the seats and the stage and the pad and everything, that's either in this or it isn't. And if it isn't in there, then we need to go back to the drawing board.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Knight. Ms. Rebecki?
When we decided to make this change as a body, I was not in favor of making the change, so I didn't vote for it, so that we could take money out of the tree fund and use it on other things. That's just one comment. When I saw this here, I was a little surprised because there's no breakdown explaining to us what the money would be used for. It's just asking us to designate that money, and I'd like to see a breakdown of those items. And I don't recall ever having a deadline when we started talking about the splash pad and doing this, the amphitheater. And it has been 2 years. I didn't know that it was a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year plan, but I just feel like we're pushing it a little bit, that there's more development coming downtown, and those people who are coming downtown might be interested in making a donation or might be interested in contributing in some way. And I'm not in favor of using this money in this way without the details. And again, I just think we're pushing it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rebecki. Mr. Knight?
I remember reading in the minutes of the TIFA that they were asked to contribute some more money. I think it was $40,000. Is that in this total? The added money that was asked for TIFA?
I think they're trying to get some of those light items right now. Great question, Mr. Knight.
I can answer that.
Sure, Ms. Marius.
Originally, they had approved $350,000 in their budget, and recently, at their last meeting, an additional $50,000 to total $400,000 has been contributed.
It's in there then. Thank you very much.
You know, I remember the conversation, and I know that there were several council members that were in favor of getting this project and actually had directed staff to seek a way to fund this project. I think it's clear that many in the community, you know, want to see this project come to fruition. I mean, that is obviously clear with the fundraising efforts by the Auburn Hills Community Foundation of $500,000. You know, our Tax Income and Finance Authority, which obviously is made up of members of our community who are appointed and confirmed by the council, they definitely have devoted and contributed, or made a promise, I should say, to contribute $400,000. So I think it's important to note that, you know, the community is asking for this, and they're putting their money where their mouth is, so to speak. So, did you have anything additional, Mr. Knight, before I move on? Ms. Mitchell?
Couple of points here. First, I firmly believe we need to operate within integrity. And if we have been soliciting donations, which have been encompassing of a splash pad, then we need to honor that, right? We don't want to be like the people that were borrowing water for free. So I'm not conflicted about that. I am conflicted about using funding from the tree fund, not because I don't think that it meets the definition, but I do feel like we are We are strongly encouraging development in a very concentrated area of our city, and we're using a lot of municipal funds to do that. And I think we're close to having enough funds to do this now, and I'm not sure why we need to expedite it. It feels like we aren't giving it time to organically develop. And so I would like to hear more conversation about why we need to move on this now. The other thing is, I would also welcome having a breakdown of specifically what it is we want that $100,000 from the tree fund to cover. I'd like to know exactly what that is.
Okay. Mr. Kittle.
I'll throw in my 2 cents. I'm gonna go with, Ms. Verbecki's comment too. I don't know what the hurry is. There is a commitment. I think we want to do it. We've always been concerned with funding. We've looked at sources. I don't think we've achieved that. And also, as a committee member for the Finance Committee, I'd like to know what the ongoing costs of the thing are going to be. There's a lot of new development that's coming down there with 3250 and with, what was the other one we just read about? I forget the name of it. Something Park. What's the other new development down there that we're waiting for shovel to go into ground on? I'd like to see, we've taken the approach, if we build it, they will come. We've been doing that for 20 years. We've spent over $20 million, and we're still waiting for a lot of them to come. And I would like us to kind of curb that, and let's get some of these other developments in, maybe a new restaurant at Parkside, and get some things happening, and then maybe shoot for having that in the ground next year. That would be my personal opinion. The tree fund money doesn't bother me one way or another. And if we can do some things to get started in small baby steps, but I think we need to get some of that other development underway down there.
Thank you, Mr. Kittle. All set? Council, any further comments or questions?
I'm going to just chime in one more, if I may.
Sure, Ms. Haney.
I know when we first started doing the bricks and all that, everything had a date on it that said, you know, needs to be done by such and such date. I think that has a lot to do with why it kind of stalled. I mean, I know that I gave out some information to other people afterwards, and they said, well, it says it's expired. And I said, no, go ahead and turn it in. And I believe a few of them might have afterwards. And I know I bought a few more afterwards. But I think that's part of the reason that we kind of ran out of, like, as far as at least the brick part, as we weren't continuing getting the word out saying we're still taking, or accepting money for this.
The only thing that I would say about that is that those were donations that were in very small amounts. They were $50 bricks, $100 bricks. So let's just say for the sake of conversation, we sold another 50 at $100, we would have been at another $5,000. So I don't think it would have changed the outcome all that significantly, but I understand what you're saying.
But in the long run, I think we just kind of quit saying, we're still looking for funds, other than maybe, you talking to businesses through the, community foundation.
It's a double-edged sword, because at some point you have to have an end date so that you can plan to actually launch the project. So we did put an end date on it, because on the flip side, you get people who say, well, there's no end date on here, I'll just think about it and do it later. So you try to get people to actually have a sense of urgency so that that they will make the contribution by a certain date.
I understand. And I also want to say that I was part of the team that was on the Riverwalk project when it first started. And I know that at that point it was divided up into different sections on what was going to be done. And I guess with this, I didn't think the splash pad was advertised as part of the package with the amphitheater. I thought it was just two separate phases that were talked about. And I still have a lot of questions. Like I said, maintenance with the splash pad and the costs of that. So I mean, as much as I want the amphitheater, I don't know if I want this as a package deal.
Okay, so Mr. Knight, go ahead.
If we wait another year, this project's gonna go up 8%. It's gonna go up $80,000 at least. We need to decide we either want it or we don't want it. I'm thinking this out loud. I think we need to now say we're either gonna do it or forget about it and turn the money back or whatever. Because if we delay another year getting going, my estimate is, and the guys can't wait, building costs are gonna keep going skyrocketing because of what's being around here, money for roads and all this stuff, and there's not gonna be things. And so I think we either need to say, we're gonna do it, and we need to do it now, or forget about the whole thing and leave the park the way it is. I don't think we can afford to wait another year. I think we need to figure out how to raise another $100,000 during that construction period, maybe through a couple more major donors or something. But I think we're at the point where we either kick the can down the road and don't do anything, and it's gonna cost us, or we step up. And I'm not sure. I think I wanna go forward because I think we can raise the money. On the other side of the hand, our finances are very tedious at best, and maybe we were way out of line to even do this. The Tifa has been very gracious to go for $400,000, but this is a Tifa and downtown self-development project as much as it is a city project. Maybe they need to come up with another 100,000, not that they even have it. So I'm just thinking out loud, but I think we need to figure out whether we're gonna do it or not, and either do it now or get rid of the whole project.
Mr. Knight, you raise some very good points. I think there's no doubt about it that you and I are very frequent in that park, particularly when it comes to the concerts in the park. And I know that there are many residents that come to that week in and week out that are extremely excited about the possibility of this whole ordeal. And I think, to be honest with you, if it's the fact that some of us are concerned about the $100,000 in the tree fund for eligible expenses, I mean, I think from my standpoint, clearly, and I understand that Ms. Rebecca wasn't in favor of it, but the change was made, right? The change was made to allow for this. And so $100,000. I firmly believe that the Tifa, while I don't know exactly their finances there, but I firmly believe that all members of that Tifa board are in full support of this, and likely, if we ask them, would find a way to come up with the extra $100,000 and contribute $500,000. I think they want it that much, right? And so that is another board that's made up of our residents, right, that are speaking very loudly by contributing this. And I think it's a direct slap in the face, not only to them, but all of our residents who clearly, we launched this fundraising effort and we sought some significant contributions in that cause, to the tune of $500,000. And now we spent 2 years of staff time. I know that many of us here had directed staff to find a way to make this project happen and to find a way to make this project happen sooner rather than later. And I think it's very unfortunate that now we're coming to the table and now everyone is forgetting or are having a change of heart. I'm not sure what it is, but personally for me, if it's the $100,000, then by all means, we could postpone this and we could get those specifics, if that's truly what is council's overwhelming concern. If it's that $100,000, then let's postpone this, get those details so that we can all feel comfortable. But if it's the fact that we're now proposed a project, we've now sought after corporations and individuals to raise this money, and now we're gonna pull the rug out from under them, I think that's the wrong way to go about it. But if it's truly just because we're concerned about the $100,000, then let's figure that tidbit out and then let's move forward. To Mr. Knight's point, it has been an all for nothing from the start, right? Mr. Knight, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you've contributed. I know you say there's a lot of big ones in there. I consider yours a substantial donation to that project. Yes, and so, and from the start, Mr. Knight has championed this whole project, and he's put his money where his mouth is to see this project, and it's been a splash pad from day one. I remember Mr. Knight stating that, and to prove that, right, he put $10,000 towards that particular project. So I just want to kind of go along the line here, and by all means, I appreciate some of the concerns around the $100,000, I think that clearly it meets the definition, but if there are council members that aren't comfortable with that, or they want to find additional information for those line items, by all means, I think that's a very justifiable question to ask. I think that that's very doable for our staff to provide, but I'm not so sure that it's just that $100,000 outside of what Mr. Kittle had mentioned, that we don't want this project to happen. So if anyone can share some concerns, if there's anything other than that $100,000 tree fund.
Mr.
Sure,
Mayor,
Miss.
I want to go on the record as saying I approve of the whole plan. I'm just not sure about the money, where it's coming from. And I thought, I guess maybe this is where I'm wrong. I thought this was a fundraising effort, that this was not about government money being put into this. I thought this was supposed to be fundraising. And fundraising doesn't have a deadline. It's when it happens. It's based on the people that happen to, the gracious people like Mr. Knight, and that is wonderful that you made a donation. And, you know, I think that that's the difference, that we're not looking at that piece of it. This is not just about us looking at our budget. It's about fundraising. And that's the piece I think that's missing.
And I think it's always been a fundraising, but to that point, it's always been partial fundraising. There's always been, as part of that, a commitment by the TIFA, right? It was always from day one going to be committed to the TIFA would contribute. The money that's captured in that district is made for improvements in that district. So rightfully so, they've committed to putting $350,000. And with all fundraisers, right, you never know how the outcome's going to get. But when you get to the point where you're on the 5-yard line and you need that little bit of nudge, the TIFA board decided that they were going to put up another $50,000. That was not, you know, we didn't beg for that. They saw that there was a need, and that's where they wanted to put their money. And then they have the right to add those funds or take those funds away. They're a separate board, as we do, right, to make those decisions. But again, I think it's a slap in the face that we appoint these members to represent our community, and they go forward and they do something, and we are going to tell them, no, that's not what we want you to spend your money on. So let me go to Ms. Mitchell, because she hasn't had an opportunity yet, and then I'll circle back.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate all the passion that's around this project. I want to see the project go forward. I don't have an issue with the project. I've always been in support of the project. My concerns lie more along the line of what I heard Councilwoman Verbecki say. The percentage of fundings that's coming from TIFA and coming from the city to support this project. Now you're at the 5-yard line. I can't play football with you, so I'm gonna have to do a basketball analogy. I feel like, you know, we're in the 4th quarter here, and we're acting like, you know, we have 2 seconds left and the shot clock's running down when we have 2 timeouts left and we haven't used them. And so I don't feel the pressure, the urgency, the timing. I guess that's what's missing for me, because I'm thinking that there's still an opportunity to secure this additional $100,000 through fundraising or through some other type of avenue. My concern is us taking so many city funds and concentrating them in a certain portion of our community. And so that's what I'm struggling with. I understand the rules of how we change the tree fund, and this may be, you know, the best way to do that or whatever. I'm not sure. I just, looking at this for this particular agenda item, I'm not 100% there. I would like to see the breakdown of it as well, but I'd also like to understand why we can't wait. I understand that, you know, interest and other things may come into play, but I don't want to rush a decision because of that. And this feels rushed to me. And I know maybe for those of you who have been passionate about it for 2 years, it seems like it's a long time. I'm just not right there with you right now.
Mr. Knight?
Just a little on the water pan and why we, Claire and I, champion it at the bands in the park and that stuff. The children's play structure brings in 100 people. They bring their kids and so on. Kids play in the river, and they're always going to play in the river. But my feeling is that the water park, done well, will bring a lot of older millennials who now have kids and so on, and will bring families to the park. And I think it's a draw. And that's why Claire and I supported it, because we think it's such an important draw to have for kids. That's the reason. No, and we got, you know, it costs to operate, purify the water. But I'm thinking we've got spray things that the kids run in. We're not gonna have a pool or something. And so I considered it a draw for families, and that's the reason I've supported it so strong. I think it makes the amphitheater successful for activities. That's the rationale.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. Mr. Kittle?
I don't think anybody's trying to, say kill this thing, or we're being deceptive and promising something that we're not gonna back up. But as a couple of the other council members mentioned, it's a timing thing. And to me, it's a fundraiser. For giggles, I thought that I'd maybe donate $10,000. So I was looking for, I'm just kidding. Sorry, Han. That I was looking for the link on our website to see where it is. Well, it's lost in a shuffle of like 12 banner messages. You can't otherwise find it. So unless you happen to peek at our website at exactly the right moment, you wouldn't see it's there anyhow. When you click on it, it's a PDF document that you would have to actually download and manually fill out to buy a brick. And to me, if we're at the 5-yard line or whatever it is we agree we're at, why don't we do another push, social media, broadcast the thing, have a donate now button on it that you could actually, feed the thing. Well, but so do you give up? I mean, so.
Nobody's giving up. I mean, nobody's giving up. I'm not saying that nobody's giving up, but there's to Mr. Tangi's point, I mean, there's a time where you say, okay, let's make the project happen. How are we gonna make the project happen? And that's what staff was asked to do. I mean, frankly, staff was asked to make this project happen and utilize funds where you're allowed to within the ordinance, the law, so on and so forth.
No, I don't dispute that, but I'm just saying that why don't we go through it through our social media channels? We always brag about how great our Twitter and Facebook is and all that stuff. And just say, I've never seen anything come back out on it. We're at the 1-yard line, help us push the ball over and go out there and ask again. And if this really is a community thing that we promised we weren't gonna use taxpayers' money on to build it, let's push the ball over the goal line.
Okay,
We
Mr.
could
Kittle,
simultaneously go out for an RFP, but
nobody said we weren't gonna use any taxpayer funds to do this, right? The campaign's always been that Tifa's been on board by giving their contribution, right? So I guess my question to you is it the $100,000 of the tree fund or is it the Tifa money and the tree fund, or is it just one of those?
The Tifa money, we've known that from day one, and they set it aside. It's that last 125,000 as per our website, to push the ball over the goal line. Why don't we make one more push and see what we can get, and then we'll.
So, okay, and that's fine.
And if we don't get it, we can back it up with something else.
Okay, my question, Mr. Tangi, before I keep continuing to go down the line here, is the $100,000 in the tree fund. And if you can't answer this, clearly we're gonna have to revisit this. The balance in the tree fund, when was the last substantial purchase we used any monies from that tree fund? And I'd like to know roughly if, Director Cohen, do you know, or?
Mr. Mayor, that would be the Squirrel Road tree planting from Walton Boulevard to Dutton Road. We also, we expended some other funds that from another project on the parkways, but that would have gone into the tree fund.
Okay, do you know roughly what that number is? I mean,
I'm sorry, not off the top of my head. I'd be taking a stab at it.
I guess I'm just curious. So we've got roughly $500,000 in the tree fund. Looking at potential development and where we could possibly, if some are looking at this tree fund as just planting trees, right? Could we possibly plant $500,000 worth of trees in our city?
We are challenged to find places to put trees at this time, new trees. We have been using the tree fund largely over the past few years to replace trees that have died, especially along Squirrel Road and some of the other city-owned roads and in parks. But
I mean, I guess I just take the approach that this was responsible spending of tax money that's sitting in there. Here we've had people pay into it, and there's no way that we're going to be able to use it if the comfortableness of using that money is literally just to plant trees, right? Which I believe is probably why the council at one time or another changed the definition of what would be feasible to use, because we had the foresight to know that we would never be able to just plant trees at that rate.
That's exactly right. And the idea of expanding the eligibility of using those funds for other things was to support any infrastructure that we put in as far as plantings goes, especially trees.
Okay. Mr. Tanji, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify something Mr. Kittle mentioned. I just want to make sure it's clear that the banner that we recently designed and put out there on our website was exactly what you just described, Mr. Kittle. It was the last push. We had been trying to raise money. We received some large corporate donations, small donations. We added it all up. There has been a lot of effort that you may not have seen, but frankly, I will tell you that the corporate donation machine is Mr. Cohen and myself. I mean, that's what it is. That's the corporate donation machine. And I have to give credit to Mr. Cohen because he's done a lot of the connections for raising those funds. And but I represent the interest here for me is, I'm on the board of the Community Foundation. And we have gone to Optimist Club meetings, and I've given brochures out there, and other meetings business meetings that I've gone to where I've shared the project. We have done the social media campaign. We did the push by creating that banner that says we're at 875, we're down to the last 125. So this isn't just like, we haven't tried and we just want a simple way out. We have been working at this for two full years. So it would be easy to say, well, we just need to go out and get another $100,000, but I don't know where that's coming from. I just want to make sure that's clear.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Sure, Ms. Rebecki.
I guess I'm glad to hear that, but see, I don't know that. I asked Johnny, did you know that? We didn't know that. We didn't see that. We didn't hear that. We weren't a part of that. So that might have just helped if along the way, if we had known those things were going on and been a part of it.
Ms. Rebecki, I mean, I understand that maybe you missed it, but I mean, there was substantial updates in city manager reports and emails that kept us abreast of each step of the way. So, I mean, I think that the effort among staff, and maybe I'm a little bit closer to it because I make sure to mention it all of the, various things that I attend. But I can tell you that is not due to lack of effort from the staff, without a doubt. And I think, when we gave the staff direction to come up with a way, right? I mean, clearly we said, come up with a way to do this. There was many at Summerfest last year that had come up to me, that had come up to Mr. Tanji, that had come up to Mr. Knight and said, how are we gonna make this happen? We had those discussions. I remember having those discussions with Mr. Knight and, our Parks and Recreation Director, Tom, at Summerfest at the car show. How are we gonna make this happen? Several council members made that a task for them to do. And now they found a way to do it. And I think they have been keeping us abreast of it. If it is, like I said, the fact that it's $100,000 and we're not comfortable with the refund, maybe we need a little bit more knowledge for this council to come to terms with that, because I think personally, I think it's a responsible way to use money, specifically since we have $500,000 in there and we're admitting to the public that there's no way that we are going to be able to plant $500,000 worth of trees. But we could provide a different value to the residents by utilizing some of that money to prepare for what's to come in that park. To me, I think that makes absolute sense, and I'd rather do that than tell people we're just gonna let that money sit there for indefinitely. Mr. Burmeister?
I'm not opposed to using the tree fund for the purpose, and Mr. Grice, I appreciate you reciting what the tree fund was used for, or supposed to be for. I would have liked to have seen the estimate that Mr. Tanji provided from OHM prior to. I didn't see that in any emails or anything. I thought the estimate was a little bit high, $1,000 for a tree. how big of trees are we getting? I thought that was a little extravagant. And I would support this motion, but I don't want to give up on seeking donations. I don't want to just say, hey, we're done.
Which, if I may, Mr. Mayor, that was kind of
Sure,
what
sure,
I
Ms.
wanted to
Hammond.
bring up. Because I don't have a problem with 100,000 from the tree fund. But I thought maybe we could compromise here tonight to get this moving and say, okay, we'll take this 100,000, but we're gonna continue to try to raise funds as best possible. And since we do have the 15% contingency or whatever, we could, you know, if we got bonus money, we can, you know, go ahead and plant another tree or a bush or possibly even buy something new for the play structure to complement it, so.
I mean, to your point, Ms. Hammond, I think that we will always, welcome donations for the fundraising effort. I think that, the whole brick thing, right, initially, when those bricks were priced, they were probably a little bit too high. And then we did the second wave where we lowered them and we got a little bit more interest, right? But I'm sure there's gonna be time that we'll be able to sell additional bricks. But to Mr. Tangi's point, you're talking if you sold, you're gonna have to sell a lot to get $100,000. And again, I guess what this is all boiling down to, are we comfortable with where the funds are coming for tonight? We are not in any way, shape, or form approving estimates, approving the project. This is the first step, right, in the 2 years that we've been working on this, to just get to the point where we can be more knowledgeable about what this project's gonna look like. I think that's the important takeaway. But that's why I wanted to make a point to say, if we're concerned with the $100,000 in the tree fund, by all means, I think it's a very valid question. If it's information that council needs to feel more comfortable, we can delay and provide, and staff would be more than willing. I'd love to give staff an opportunity to provide that information. But again, I just want to make sure that that's really, truly the concern.
One more question.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Can anybody answer how many grants we applied for this? Did we, or?
I don't think that we applied for anything. In fact, I don't even think most of this would be eligible, but Don, you.
Okay. I just know there's a community nearby that had grants for one that they made, that the splash pad that they put up, so I wasn't sure which grant, but.
There's a number of different grant programs and private funding foundations in it that sometimes choose to support this type of a project. In the past, the DNR Trust Fund, which is the major fund that would fund most park improvement projects, has supported this type of project, but for the last 6 or more years, I think since we started working on this in 2010, they have specifically excluded amphitheaters. Splash pad has been a non-eligible expense, and we re-review that with the DNR every year, and they, based on their parameters, don't anticipate that changing anytime soon. So as far as funding from any of the public sources, it's not out there for this type of project. Now, for some of the future components we've looked at for the trails and the pathway connections bridges, those would be potential expenditures, but even still, those grant programs usually cap out. You get like $200,000 or $300,000 is the maximum grant amount you could get.
I will add that in the early stages, when we were first talking about this, we actually had a grants program subscription. Mr. Barnes, when he was the finance director, had actually subscribed to it. So we did do a lot of research on trying to find grants for these things. That just it's not something that they're funding. So, and that was a national grant subscription. So we were looking beyond just Southeast Michigan or Michigan.
Mr. Kittle.
I think that, doesn't the MML have a foundation that they have some placemaking stuff going on that they might be a source for it? And I'm not looking for an answer for it, but I think there is an opportunity there. And I appreciate the fact the staff, we ran this dog hard, we tried to get it over the goal line and so forth. And yeah, I know you guys love my analogies, but when you look at the homepage on this, we've got Kyle and whoever, Jessica, that can, do some social thing. On our website, on the banner, it has, I'm trying to get back to it, but it says, there's an image that was put in there and it says, click on the support button to get it. There is no support. There's no word on the thing that says support. And if you did click on on the thing, and then again, it takes you to that PDF. And I don't know, I think we had a GoFundMe, or did we just have, I
No, we
mean,
had-
what the heck?
We had, we had sharing via social media of how to,
But if I was so inclined to throw 50 or $100 at it or something like this because I caught some Twitter feed or some Facebook post to just throw a little more money at it, I can't do it. You know, I'm not gonna print off a PDF and I could do it from my cell phone if I had the opportunity, but the way it's set up, nobody in their right mind. It's called, as you know, conversion on a website. What's your ability to convert? And even if somebody was willing to donate money, it's not set up for them to be able to do it without some extraordinary effort. And I have no problem with the tree fund. I'd like to call it a loan, to pay it back. But, if that's what it took to get started. But I do think with minimal effort, like an hour worth of work, you could set this thing up and just see, maybe you get 10,000, 25, 50,000. Maybe Tom Gores feels obliged to throw in 100K, something along those lines, but it could help us get closer to funding the whole thing, self-funding the whole thing, and that's what I think. So I'm done.
Your Honor.
Ms. Mitchell.
Okay, so I would like to make this proposal. If we could look at the wording and have it say up to $100,000 from the tree fund and continue doing this fundraising like Councilmember Kittle just illustrated, I don't know why there's resistance to this. So you did it once, do it again. It's not gonna hurt you and it might actually give us more funding. So I appreciate you're passionate about it and you've been working on it for a long time, but it comes out that you're being hypersensitive and you're not listening to this feedback. Where nobody's saying we don't want to, I haven't heard any council member say that they don't want to do this amphitheater. I haven't heard anybody. If anybody doesn't want to do it, speak now or don't ever bring the damn thing up again.
I'm not being hypersensitive, but I'm not a fundraiser, and I'm doing this as part of my city manager
please
job.
let me speak right now, okay? Let me speak. So nobody said they didn't want to do the amphitheater. All we're asking is that do we really have to take $100,000 out of the tree fund to do that? If the answer is yes, maybe it's yes. I haven't heard a majority of the people say that they're opposed to taking the money out of the tree fund. What I have heard is can you please go back and do some additional fundraising? I don't think that's too much to ask. Let us do that. Also, could we get the breakdown of what the $100,000 would be used for? Now, if I can get that information, I will move forward and support this. But I will tell you that I am getting a little bit concerned about how much money we, and when I say we, I'm thinking of Tifa and the city, are spending in our downtown area to try to push development, okay? I want to see us have a partnership. I want to have us see some municipal growth there, and I want to see us have that coupled with private growth. And I feel like we're doing a little bit too much municipal right now. But if we can get those pieces of information, I would be comfortable moving forward on this. And I don't think it's unreasonable for us to ask that. Now, did you want to make a comment now, Mr. Tangi?
Again, my comment is, I'm not in the fundraising business. We have gone out and we've raised over $500,000. We've put 2 years into it. And it's pretty easy to sit here now and talk about how we should have raised another 100,000. I don't know what else to tell you. It's not that easy. It's not as easy as you may think. I'm happy to go and, as I mentioned, we put a banner out that said, we were getting close. We're trying to make the final push. We gave out 200 brick paver flyers as people exited each state of the community each year. We've gone to community groups. We've done social media. We're doing this as a side issue in addition to the regular jobs that we do all day long. And I'm not objecting to doing another push, and I think it would be a good idea to say up to $100,000 and we continue to get the word out on the project. I have no objection to that. I just want you to understand, I don't want to create false expectations for any of you that somehow miraculously, after trying so many avenues for 2 years, that we're going to suddenly come up with the last $100,000, because if it were that easy, we would have never had this discussion tonight because I'd have the extra 100,000.
Okay, so my response to that is, I don't think anyone said that it would be easy, but I do appreciate the effort that has been done. We've done a lot of work, but we haven't hit the goal, so the work can't stop. We got to continue doing it. That's my feedback to that response.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Knight?
What if we borrowed $200,000 from the tree fund? Because we borrowed from other funds. We borrowed from water and sewer. We owe them back from the golf course and so on. What if we borrowed that? And then if we can raise the money, you can pay it back. Or in the future, we may say, hey, we didn't make it, now we're gonna make it a grant. But by making it a loan, if we do some more fundraising, we can put the fundraising in the project and reduce what we use from the tree fund, but it would allow us to go forward. And that's just an idea of borrowing rather than granting it outright.
Mr. Knight, I definitely appreciate the effort to try to find a kind of a middle ground here. I guess that's why I kind of bring myself back to the $100,000 tree fund definition, right? So if that's a concern of this council, and you know, from Ms. Mitchell's comments, it doesn't seem like it's an overwhelming concern about the 100,000. Granted, we would like the breakdown, right? We clearly would like the breakdown, but I think it meets the definition of why we would use it. We've demonstrated and we've put those changes because we know that we're never going to spend $500,000 on the definition of planting a tree or plants or whatever. So I don't understand why we would want to, if we have a problem with the $100,000, right, then I can see the push. And by all means, I'm all for let's push to see how much we can raise money up until the 11th hour of when we put that shovel in the ground. We can continue to do that, and I think we should do that. And I got a feeling that we will do that. But if we're not concerned, that's why I want to know, if we're not concerned about the $100,000, then why such an effort to push for more funding? Because ultimately, this is just stating, are you comfortable with the $100,000 coming from the tree fund? We've known from day one, other than $50,000 was coming from TIFA, and that the goal was to get roughly $600,000 if we could from corporate donations, personal donations. So I just want to make sure that we're clear. I'm just going to go down the line because I think it's for the sake of clarity we need to. Mr. Kittle, the $100,000, are you concerned with the definition of utilizing the 100,000?
No, I'm not. My concern on that is that it's just, I don't want us to give up on.
And that's definitely noted, and I agree with you. Mr. Burmeister, are you concerned with the definition of what staff is proposing or what was decided, right, amongst previous councils of changing the definition of utilizing the tree fund for those improvements that Mr. Grice mentioned?
No, I was not opposed to that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Rebecki?
I am, like I previously stated, I still am opposed to it.
And you voted no to that originally when they made the change?
Yeah, I felt like it was wrong to take away the tree fund money from people who put money into the tree fund to put trees in the ground for us to be able to use it for something else.
Perfect.
Thought it was deceitful.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hammond, the $100,000, any concerns? I just want to reiterate, we're going to get a breakdown of what the 100,000. I agree with Ms. Mitchell. We're going to get up to 100,000.
Right.
Made the wording changed, right?
Right, that's why I said the compromise would be we continue with the fundraising as well. I have no problem with it.
Okay. Mr. Knight, I think I know your answer, but if you could please share, are you comfortable with the tree fund being utilized for the improvements that Mr. Grice stated? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Heaven help me, I'm aligned with Councilmember Kittle. He said it perfectly.
Okay, so we're getting there. We're getting down to the 5-yard line. So we're all comfortable with the tree fund being utilized for that, other than Ms. Rebecki. So the majority is comfortable with that. My second question is, can everybody be in agreement that we can, because this is what this was for tonight, right? This was are we okay with the funds as presented? The only change that we're being really presented tonight was the additional of the 50,000 from TIFA and the 100,000 from the tree fund. We knew everything else going into it. With that being said, is everyone else in agreement with we will continue moving forward with a fundraising effort, make some changes to the website, social media, whatever that entails, seek our experts with Kyle and our social media coordinator? Mr. Kittle, does that pretty much?
And I mean, I feel like we're getting criticized for, pushing, beyond the scope of what Tom's job is or whatever. But if we're doing this sort of thing, if we're handing out 200 paper copies of an application where you can buy a brick at some event, it's the equivalent of trying to sell newspapers in a digital economy. And, again, it's not on our Facebook. There's no ability to convert on our website. If we did at least another splash on the thing, I know we'd get more money.
And so we will, I guess we're all in agreement here that we'll move forward. But again, I just, okay. Sure, go ahead, Mr. Beckley, go ahead. It's probably a good,
Suggest
okay. Yeah, sure. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Knight.
We approve this and all that, and we come in $50,000 under budget. Where's that 50,000 go? Into the general fund? Where would it go if we raise some more money and we've got this and we come in under? Do we put it back in the tree fund?
Well, I think we can all make that decision. I honestly think that's something that we could set a policy on at the time once we figure out.
Yeah, I think the logical place is we're asking for additional money to meet our obligation from the tree fund, so we probably would relieve it from the tree fund.
Right.
Contingency to cover.
Correct. Okay, so I'm going to ask Mr. Beckerleg if you can kind of take what we've gathered here from a consensus standpoint, and maybe there's something that everyone is comfortable with.
I think I can get us close. Move to authorize the utilization of tree funds in the amount of up to $100,000, account number 242-447-955-002 for the amphitheater splash pad Riverside Park improvement project, subject to the continuation of the fundraising efforts, with any additional funds raised via continuation of the fundraising efforts to be deposited back into the tree fund, and subject to Planning Commission site plan approval and the completion of a competitive bid process for the project.
Okay. Do we have support for that motion?
So moved.
Or moved a motion for that?
I will
Support for the
move that.
motion.
I will second that motion.
Moved by Ms. Hammond. We have support by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion? All right, Madam Clerk, we are ready to vote.
Ms. Hammond,
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Verbecki,
No.
Mr. Burmeister,
Yes.
Mr. Kittle,
Yes.
Mr. Knight,
Yes.
Mayor McDaniel,
Yes,
motion carries.
thank you. All right, where were we? Did anybody order dinner? 9J. And council, thank you for the discussion. It is always healthy discussion here at this table, so I do. I'm sorry, 9K. I definitely don't want to revisit 9J. All right, 9K. Request for motion to approve Department of Public Works roof replacement bid award. Director Melcher.
Good evening once again. In 2016, the DPW staff and a contractor that we enlisted performed an inspection on the DPW roof over the office area of the building. The rubber membrane roof is over 25 years old. It's the original roof. Has had some minor leaking in the past several years. It did have a 20-year life expectancy. We did receive a quote from a contractor for budget purposes. We assigned $50,000 to the facilities budget for this project. However, the bids did come in significantly higher, about 62% for the low bid. And this is largely due to a significant increase in work across the region, especially the auto industry, the recent windstorm, and increases in material and labor costs. We received this information from the Garland Company, a consultant that we enlisted to prepare the bid specs for the roof replacement. The roof does need to be replaced to avoid structural damage in the building, and therefore staff does recommend award of the bid to the low bidder, Royal Roofing Company, Inc., in the amount of $81,000. Staff is prepared to answer questions at this time.
Thank you, Director Melcher. Mr. Knight?
Does that replace the whole roof or just patch places and then put shingles on or whatever? Is it a whole new roof?
Whole new roof, removed, new insulation underneath, and a brand new rubber membrane on top.
You're gonna open up the building you'll open up the roof in order to do it properly.
That's correct. And this is just the office area. The garage area was replaced recently in the past.
Council, any further question? Mr. Kittle?
Is it possible, Ron, with the, the surge in work because of the windstorm and that, in another couple of months, when things settle down and some of these, patches or leaky roofs are done, that if we were to rebid this, we might see something closer to our original estimate, and we could use the difference to help the amphitheater? No, just kidding. But no, I mean, the first part of the question is my question.
I doubt it, and for this reason, the major roofing contractors are filling their schedules for the year. And that's one of the reasons this bid's coming in higher. They're just bidding on the smaller jobs to fill little spots. If we bid it next year, possibly, but it really needs to be repaired this year.
But so something that, they do in August or September that wouldn't kind of subside the peak demand that they're seeing now for.
It's hard to say. Again, I believe they fill their schedule to cover the entire year.
Yeah, but you're basically, you would say, if you got approval tonight, you would call these guys tomorrow, and you're looking to get this thing going in a couple of weeks, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
All set, Mr. Kittle? Any further questions, council? If not, a motion, or I'm open for a motion.
Your Honor,
Ms. Mitchell?
are you getting a little tired over there?
I am.
I move to approve Department of Public Works roof replacement bid award to Royal Roofing Company Incorporated for the amount of $81,000 to be paid from the Facilities Building Maintenance 101-265-931-000.
All right, moved by Ms. Mitchell. Do we have support? Support. Supported by Mr. Burmeister. Any further discussion or comment? We're ready to vote.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Burmeister?
Yes.
Ms. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Kittle?
Yes.
Mr. Knight?
Yes.
Ms. Verbecki?
Yes.
Mayor McDaniel?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Now, we're on the 5-yard line. Item number 10, maybe we should skip this, huh? Comments and motions from council. Ms. Hammond.
I've got a couple. First off, I sent Mr. Tangi a picture. The large coyote was in my yard at 10:30 this morning. Have you seen it at your house now? I didn't see the second one with it today, but they're still hanging around. And I think we all got this letter about code enforcement, which unfortunately, there was no return address, there was no contact name or whoever had filled this out. But for the record, I would like to say, whoever had sent this, that we do have a code enforcement hotline. And the number is 248-364-6935. So that is more helpful than sending us an anonymous thing with just addresses and possible enforcement issues.
Correct. Thank you, Ms. Hammond. To that point, though, staff does have the list there, and as they do with all complaints, they will thoroughly investigate and make sure that appropriate action is taken. So thank you for bringing the number to everyone's attention. Are you all set, Ms. Hammond? Yes. Okay, Mr. Knight?
Just a quick one. The day before, early yesterday morning, my son had been up north and came home at 4 o'clock in the morning, and somebody just north of the bridge on Squirrel had hit the curb and left debris all over and disappeared. And he was concerned about it, so he stopped. He called our 911. It took 6 minutes for our car to respond, which was very good. One comment, he's talking to the dispatcher like it went, well, it's on Squirrel Road right by the bridge. The dispatcher indicated they didn't have the faintest idea where that was. And a word, You don't say that to people. It gives a wrong impression, but the response was very good. And I don't know if they ever found anybody, but I assume it was somebody drunk that went. He looked all around for a body because the window was broken out and so on. As he called, waited. But I want to let you know they gave us good service.
I got my car fixed, Mr. Knight. Right. Mr. Kittle,
I'll pass, thank you.
Mr. Burmeister.
I know I've asked this before, but driving up and down Updike Road, Mountain Jacks, what is going on there? Is anything happening? It seems, I'm waiting for rats to come out of the building or the building to fall down. Well, we don't want to put another restaurant there because there's one right next
Is that
door.
one you would vote for, Mr. Kittle? Does anybody have an answer to that? Otherwise, do you want to get back with us, Director Cohen?
The building's been stabilized. There's been a decade of code enforcement on the project, and we were just talking recently about what to do next with the building. No developers have shown interest.
Okay. All set, Mr. Burmeister? Okay. Ms. Rebecki.
Pass this evening, thank you.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Thank you. City Manager Tangi, is there an update regarding the status of the employee identification number for the library?
Nothing more. We've done a little research on libraries that have their own EIN number, but I'll follow up. I just got that document actually today. I haven't seen, oh, she left, Ms. Schultz today. So we're gonna have to make a determination about whether it's going to be feasible for us to, impose having an EIN number separate for the library. There's some, we're finding there's more and more work involved with that, but we did look to see if other libraries have that same circumstance, and they do. So I have a list officially now, did a little bit more homework on that.
Okay. Do you have an idea of how much time is going to be required before that assessment's complete, and you know if it's something we want to pursue or not?
We know some details about some of what is going to be required as a result of whether they have their own independent EIN number. I'd have to touch base with Ms. Schultz to be able to really determine that. Quite honestly, it hasn't been a priority only because we've been operating the way we've been operating for as long as the library has existed, so we haven't made it a priority at this point other than to gather information about, with the latest piece coming today from the Library Network, which did a nice survey for us to determine what libraries are operating under their own employee identification number. So there's nothing that prevents us from continuing to operate the way we are, but the issue seemed to be as a result of that lease that it helps to sort of separate the identity of those employees from being city employees. So I have to circle back around with Ms. Schultz and get a more definitive answer in terms of how long it would take to actually implement it. And then also, what are the implications? Because one of the comments she made was whether we have the kind of staffing it's going to take to fulfill the obligations by having two EIN numbers. So, and the initial step is something the library has to do. They have to file for their own EIN number, not us.
And have we started those conversations with them, or?
No.
Okay, so I will concur that I don't know that it's something we need to immediately do. I know I started initiating this request back on January 23rd, understanding whether or not this was something that we wanted to do, particularly in light of the recommendation we received from our auditor. So if we're not going to do it, if we decide for whatever reason it's not manageable for us or it's not necessary, I would just like to understand that. My original concern regarding the lease was the absence of the EIN number and the confusion that I felt like it led to. But if we have done an assessment and we come back and we say, we don't think that it should be done because of X, Y, and Z, I will respect that. I would just like to understand the timing associated with having that done. So if I could get that feedback by the end of the month, that would be appreciated. I know there were other members on council that also had interest in that particular topic. Anything else?
Okay, I think I've said enough tonight. So I'm gonna move on to the city attorney's report and then city manager's report.
I have nothing.
All right, so council, we will need a motion to go into executive session regarding an attorney's opinion letter for our multifamily zoning.
So moved.
Moved by Ms.
Supported.
Rebecki, supported by Ms. Hammond. We're ready to vote.
Ms. Rebecki?
Yes.
Ms. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Kittle?
Yes.
Mr. Knight?
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Burmeister?
Yes.
Mayor McDaniel?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn moved by Mr. Knight, supported by Ms. Mitchell. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned.